to throw over the top. Right there, Whittington, touchdown.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Penix wants to throw, looking downfield, looking, takes a shot. Roman Dunze! Did he hold on? Yes, sir! Touchdown, Washington! Roman Dunze! Playing a Bolitnikov kind of game. Another explosive, this time for 33, and the Huskies take the lead.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Another blitz. One-on-one for Neighbors. He's got it! Touchdown!
Oh, my goodness.
By Malik Neighbors!
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
3rd and 9. Four-man rush against Plummer to the end zone this time, and it's intercepted by Bethune. He made a great play earlier and comes up with the pick in the end zone. The Florida State defense does it again.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Levitt's a heavy pressure. The ball's out. Scooped up by Army. Fortner taking it to the end zone.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Mevis kick on the way. It's good! There's a flag down. Missouri at the moment has walked it off.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
And good afternoon. This is 365 Sports. We will take you up until 6 o'clock today, as we do most every afternoon. Paul with a triple option 1 to 2. We're on every afternoon 3 until 6. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak. I'm David Smoak, and Jet McKenzie running the mothership. And we have a lot to get to, including later on a look at 3 of the SEC schedules with Texas A&M, Texas, and Oklahoma. Also some transfer portal news. We'll update the high school football state championship with some connections to college football up in Arlington. And, of course, more. And I want to get more into Craig's topic in this first hour about how do you change your expectations of what wins and losses, a record, with the chance now that 12 teams will get, not a chance, but 12 teams getting into the championship playoff starting next year. Also, we again have guests today from Max Olssen, Taylor McHargue, to check out all the quarterbacks either still available or the ones that have moved around in college football. Chris Level on Texas Tech and the fact that they've had a pretty good run and not much more other than Mickey Spagnola on the Cowboys. Craig's off the radar, Paul Catalina at his top 5. Earl Campbell, Tyler Rose Award. They've announced their finalists, and those finalists will include Texas running back in alphabetical order, Jonathan Brooks, Ollie Gordon, Oklahoma State, Jalen Milroe, Alabama, Caden Salter from Liberty, and Gente, Conference Player of the Year from Boise State. Craig?
Ashton Gente, a really good player from Boise. Jalen Milroe obviously had a great run after the Texas game. Jonathan Brooks, a really good year, got cut short by injury, so interesting to see him included there. But also, you had Ollie Gordon with Big 12, Offensive Player of the Year type of run, and now I'm forgetting without the graphic up there. Gente, Gordon, Milroe,
Jonathan
Brooks, and there's a fifth one though.
Caden Salter.
Yeah, Caden Salter from Liberty. You know, he had a really good year. They played a pretty light schedule. That's very Ian McCall, by the way. That's something that, you know, people have pointed out here and there, but Ian McCall really pulling the old Baylor scheduling card out there at Liberty of let's make this as – and they moved into a conference. So, you know, they did have that transition, but they beat up on a schedule, and Caden Salter was the guy throwing all the haymakers. He had a really big year numbers-wise. So, yeah, it's a good group. The award – which is Earl's namesake, and he's very much involved with, as is his family. They want to honor the best player in college football, Division I, from the state of Texas, or that has Texas ties. And in this case, all 5 of these guys are from Texas. Genty moved to Texas in high school, but he played high school, graduated high school ball, so he's counted into that list. So yeah, these are the 5. Now there's a lot of debate that was had, over others. Quinn Ewers had the big performance in the Big 12 championship game, but was his season player of the year worthy? Ultimately decided no. Can't factor into the playoffs here. There were a lot of other really good candidates. Ishmael Mahdi at Texas State had a really nice year. If special teams counted, which it doesn't, it's an offensive player of the year award, then maybe Ishmael Mahdi gets the nod. Taj Brooks had a really good year for Texas Tech, and big news that he's going to be coming back. And I could go on and on. Jalen Polk at Washington, although he faded down the stretch and didn't really have many catches at all in the last month. So this is what it got whittled down to. I think 5 really, really good players. I think it's going to be really hard to decide amongst these 5 because they've either risen or fallen or gotten hurt in Brooks's case. But I think all 5 guys, if you just look at the storylines of college football this year, Brooks obviously a huge part of Texas's run to get them to where they are. Ollie Gordon had a huge year for Oklahoma State. Milroe, one of the best, most improved stories. Salter, G5 represented there. And then Genty, I think a guy from the G5 who really got overlooked, and I fought really hard for him because he had a massive year. The top player, offensive yards, all-purpose. He was the top guy in the entire country when it came to 500-plus yards receiving, over 1,000 rushing, 19 touchdowns. So, yeah, I like the group, and I think they are, really representing the state of Texas well.
All right, we'll have the votes eventually, and they'll have the banquet at the first of the year. But those are the 5 finalists for the Campbell Award. Paul, of those names on that group of 5, who would you think you don't have to, but who you'd vote for?
It would come down to Ollie Gordon and Jalen Milroe for me.
Okay.
I think, Ashton Genty, though, man, you do want to start awarding guys for being the best at something in the entire country.
Yeah.
And that, the spirit of the award is that. So that would be tough. But to me, and maybe I might have some Milroe glasses on right now because I've been I'm just very impressed by his story and the way that, this is a dude who was benched in the second game of the year.
Yep.
And not injured, benched. Or the third game, I guess that would have been against USF. They benched Jalen Milroe. And that was sending him sent a message, played most of the game with a guy who's now quit football and is going to play lacrosse at quarterback, and came out of that, and then all of a sudden he's been one of the most dynamic players in the country. So, yeah, and Ollie Gordon changed Oklahoma State's season. Jonathan Brooks may have ran away with this thing had he not gotten injured. I don't know.
I agree. I think he would have.
Yeah.
I think he would have.
I mean, he might
his numbers are comparable, and he missed the last month, and I think that's why he ultimately got a nod, was because he was so impressive when he was playing, and a huge part of why Texas ended up where they are.
And especially if you can just project him out, if he has what his average games were for those games that he missed,
Wet Blanket saying, and he's been fighting this battle. And Wet Blanket, we appreciate you. He's an Oklahoma State fan, but Brooks's numbers compared to Gordon's numbers before Gordon was hurt. Brooks had 1,035 yards and 8 touchdowns, and Ollie Gordon had 1,225 yards and 12 touchdowns. So even when Brooks was hurt, but I still think that it depends on what Brooks would have done in some of the games down the stretch. But those two, it would have been hard to separate the two of them. It's still even hard, but Gordon ended up with the bigger year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Brooks is going to be hurt by the fact that he was hurt. I mean, I think that that's ultimately going to probably catch up to him when you're looking at the other guys, finishing out their seasons. But I think that's also respecting the year that he did have before he got hurt. But yeah, I mean, Ollie Gordon was the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. We'll see if he's the Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award Player of the Year. But I do know that Genty's already announced that he's coming back to Boise State next season. Jalen Milroe today announcing that he's coming back to Alabama next season. We'll see on Jonathan Brooks and what he ultimately decides to do. Ollie Gordon, I guess is he a junior? I'm trying to remember now. Or a sophomore, I think. He's a sophomore.
I think he's a sophomore at eligibility.
Of course, off the top of my head, I hadn't been thinking about that. And then, that would leave, I guess, wait, who am I missing? Brooks, Milroe, Gordon, and Genty. I got Brooks. Caden Salter, yeah. So, I mean, that's a name that'll be interesting to watch. Like, I would imagine he's probably getting some transfer offers, but who knows? Yeah. So, yeah, that's a good group.
Liberty for a G5 team, like they've got some money that around there that can keep people in the fold if they really want them to. But yeah, Caden Salter had a fantastic year, so wouldn't be surprised. He's a quarterback, so his value is even more amplified.
The high school state championships in Texas began yesterday with 3 games every day all the way through the 6A schools on Saturday. I bring those up because last night Timpson won the 2A Division I state championship. And Terry Bussey, I have a high school website. He was my MVP, overall the dude. And as a junior was Mr. Texas football. He had 311 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, 155 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns to lead Timpson to their first ever state title. If you'd never seen him play and you got a chance to watch Timpson, he was fantastic in a win against Toller. Today, Texas Tech commit Adam Hill had a touchdown catch, 133 yards rushing, and 2 scores as Albany beat Mart for the second consecutive year to win the 2A Division II title. So a couple of college notes on those players in what they did so far the last day and a half up at AT&T Stadium in Arlington.
Yeah, A&M's getting a good one in Terry Bussey. I mean, a superb player, and he was a man among boys last night in that game, and he will be facing a very large step up in competition from small ball in Texas high school football, even though it's, there's nothing unserious about it. I mean, it's Texas high school football, so it's pretty serious stuff. But, going to the SEC, I'm curious how, much he translates early on, but there's no denying that he's going to be a big-time explosive playmaker for them sooner rather than later. And it was just almost unfair watching him and just his team as a whole, all of the weapons they had, but watching him in particular running around and making throws and just doing a lot of fun stuff in that win last night. They didn't have to break much of a sweat, Timpson, to get that state championship, and he was a large part of why. So a spectacular year capped off in the best way possible. He had an A&M sticker on his helmet too, so he was repping the Aggies. And then to see Mart lose today, I mean, a second time in a row. Kevin Hoffman a few years ago retires and then comes back, just like he's back like a couple years later or whatever it was, a year later, and they're back to being Mart. But kind of strange to see them losing a couple state titles in a row. So that speaks volumes about Albany and the type of program that they have, because there's a time where Mart was pretty much indestructible and unbeatable, and that's now been 2 years in a row they've fallen in that final game. So shout out to Kevin Hoffman and the Panthers. No, that's not how you wanted to finish it, but that also speaks volumes about Albany.
All right, one other note about Terry Bussey. His uncle, Domingo Bryant, former A&M safety, played in the NFL with the Oilers. The first game I ever covered in 1981 as a high school as a TV broadcaster was Garrison and Timpson. And here was Terry Bussey last night, who is the nephew of Domingo Bryant, who was a phenomenal player with the Aggies and eventually, again, an NFL player. So that kind of brought it full circle for me.
Yeah, he's a 5-star, so it's not like people weren't really aware of him. But if you got to watch him for the first time last night, especially if you're an A&M fan, you are that much more pumped up about the type of player that you're getting. So, yeah, he'll be a lot of fun to watch for the Aggies. And I'm sure, there's a lot of I know there's a lot of teams out there that wanted him. Texas as well. They were part of the mix, and many, many others. So a very nice get there for Mike Elko and company.
A question on the chat room from Kyle. I was watching the six-man game, 84-36 in the third quarter. It was over. Is there a mercy rule? Yes, Paul? How many points is it?
45 glorious points.
45 points.
That needs to, they need to move the mercy rule into the upper levels. Maybe not 45 points, but at least start a running clock, because games can get super long in high school football, especially given the fact that you have a halftime that starts the day before the friggin' game and then lasts until the day after. But yeah, no, they have a 45-point rule in six-man football.
All right, from Querte, I wanted Terry Bussey in Austin, but perhaps that city's too big. And good for A&M. Quan Cosby went to a school smaller than Timpson, and he turned out to be pretty damn good. Of course, he played a little bit in minor league baseball before he ended up being a star for Texas football.
Yeah, well, you talk about those smaller East Texas towns, like that's more Aggie territory. It is. I mean, they're going to have.
Has been, yeah.
They're going to have guys go to Texas on occasion. I think you get up more into Northeast Texas, like Gilmer and Texas High, and places like that. I think that can lean a little bit more Texas. But the further southeast you get, like from the eastern side of Texas, from like Texarkana down to Houston, you get Golden Triangle area. That's a lot of A&M territory down there. And so, I think it just kind of depends on, the individual and their background and just their preferences, because A&M does get their fair share of guys who probably don't want the big bright lights of Austin, all the time, that they're from Timpson or they're from, a smaller town, and that's not really their style. But for some guys it is. So, I think it's just a case-by-case basis, but not surprised to see a kid from East Texas, especially a small town, lean Aggies. That's kind of how it's been for a long time.
The southern part outside of Tyler and into Lufkin was usually an A&M deal. That was from back in the day when in fact, Reggie McNeil, of course, was one back after his senior year when they won the state championship. All right, so that's that. The Jason Whitten Collegiate Man of the Year Award. The three finalists include a Big 12 player. How about Tony Bradford from Texas Tech? Tony Bradford Jr., Blake Corum, the running back from Michigan, and also Mike Hollins from Virginia. This is for the Collegiate Man of the Year, very similar to the Art Rooney, I think, Man of the Year award that they give in the NFL with Jason Whitten, the former Tennessee Vol and Cowboys Hall of Famer.
Yeah, good names on the list. Blake Corum, obviously the most recognizable of it, but yeah, we'll be interested to see. I was hoping we get to vote on this one, but
I haven't had that.
I did not get that yet.
I didn't either. I did not get that either. You want some transfer portal news?
Yeah, I've got some too to fill in once you're done.
All right, you go with yours, and then we'll get to the ones that I sent Jack.
All right, some interesting ones. Curtis Rourke, quarterback from Ohio, he's on his way to Indiana. And they lost Sorsby. He went to Cincinnati. So Curtis Rourke from Ohio had a really good year for the Bobcats, on his way to play for Kurt Cignetti and the Hoosiers. Aiden Childs, I don't know if we had that one, but Aiden Childs on his way to Michigan State.
That was the one I had. Yeah, that's good.
And a not shocking move at all to follow Jonathan Smith there. He will probably be the starter. And there was another one I wanted to get Craig's thoughts on. Key Lawrence is leaving Oklahoma, and he is going to Ole Miss. So another OU portal departure there. And as of today, and Texas Tech signed offensive lineman Davion Carter, who came from Memphis.
Yeah, so a lot to get to. I mean, for Texas Tech, that's a really nice offensive line pickup. I mean, Lord knows they need some, improvement and help on the offensive line to really get to where they want to be. And, I mean, they obviously had a good enough year where Taj Brooks had a massive season. You got him coming back. I know that he responded to the news of that commitment of, basically saying, like, let's go. So, I think he was fired up about that addition, and that seems to be a good one, a good area of focus for Texas Tech. You knew they were going to add on the offensive line, so that's one step towards that. Key Lawrence going to Ole Miss. It's going to be funny, like how often now with the transfer portal that you are going to run into guys, into familiar faces, of just like, oh, hey, you used to be on our team and you're going to come across. So Oklahoma have been very interesting with the transfer portal here early on. And, he played a lot, had a lot of, moments and, played in a lot of games for the Sooners. So that's a good get for Lane Kiffin. I don't think it's as much of a panic attack as it was, a couple days ago when you were losing offensive linemen left and right. It seemed to be more of a kind of a respectful, like, hey, best of luck to Key Lawrence. So, he had also played at Tennessee. So, he's a guy that's bounced around a lot and kind of just a showing of, or a sign of, I guess, of the times that we live in now, that he's going to play 3 different teams in the SEC alone. So I guess no, it's technically 2 because Oklahoma wasn't in the SEC when he played for them. But you get the point of he'll play for 3 of the teams in the same conference. And then Aiden Shiles, that seemed to be kind of the writing on the wall the moment that Jonathan Smith moved. Although I guess, speculation early on, what DJU maybe could follow him. But then it seemed like there's a lot of traction about Aiden Shiles and that making a lot of sense for Michigan State. So they've got a quarterback, keep building out there in Spartan land, and I'm excited to see what Jonathan Smith does. That's been kind of a forgettable program these last couple of years, unless you're thinking about like negative, nasty, bad headlines and just drama. That's been kind of the Michigan State MO for a little while now. So good to see them kind of just getting back to football and seeing what Jonathan Smith can do with a bump in pay and facilities and things at his disposal there in that conference, as opposed to what he was staring at with the Beavers moving forward. And I think that about covered all of the ones that you mentioned. I don't know. I'm going blind here.
There is one player that's visiting Baylor this afternoon, that Daquan Finn that we discussed yesterday with the writer from Toledo Blade. He's going to visit campus this afternoon as possibility of joining Baylor in their quarterback room. Not sure if that will be his only visit or 2 or 3 others. I'm not sure of when he'll make the decision, but Daquan Finn in Waco to visit Baylor and Dave Aranda. The SEC schedule released. Texas A&M. We'll start with them because the Aggies have been a part of this conference. The schedule that they have, you can see it on the right-hand side. Notre Dame, but the conference games and where they are and the dates involved, their first conference game in the SEC will be at Florida the 3rd week of the year. Eventually, they will play Arkansas, Missouri, Mississippi State, LSU, at South Carolina. They'll have that non-conference game. The SEC tucks into the back part of November. And then Auburn on the road and Texas. The game, we knew the day, but now there's the schedule with Texas and A&M November 30th.
I like how they've just, very calculated, brainwashed people into believing that they can play one less conference game and also have a cupcake game at the end of the year. But, hey, we play all these hard teams, so we deserve it. And if others did this, we would scream bloody murder. Mm-hmm. They just all convinced us of that. I think that that's just kind of BS. Now, granted, you look at the schedule and you see a run of where you're playing, Missouri and LSU and Texas or whatever some of the combinations may be. That's not to say there's not some 3-week stretches where it's super difficult, but I don't know. It's just strange. Like you puff out your chest and say you're the best, but then it's like you say, okay, well then you should play one more cup. Well, we can't do that. That would be too tough. But I thought you were the best. Like I thought, like that. So that doesn't jive with me when it's brag, and then, but you're not. But it's too hard to play another conference game. I would think that you would embrace that and really just take it over the top. But I get sort of kind of the argument, but I do think there's this weird double whammy of one less conference game, and that just so happens that that's not all the first month. We pluck and take one and we put it there at the end to give a break, and we just accept that, and we don't accept that. There's a lot of people that complain about that, and I'm sure have complained about that today, but that's just a kind of a funny quirk on these SEC schedules that's very noticeable.
But when it comes down to, the recency bias in picking postseason teams, a lot of the teams in the postseason didn't have that cupcake the second to last week that they could do things. They didn't have, as also award season. Like they didn't have somebody, you'd
have Jay Daniels running for 500 yards and throwing for 500 yards in a game against the cupcake.
I will say this because Jack and I just did talk about it on the earlier show. What the SEC can do this year, though, when that is brought up, they can bring up the schedule for Poor Billy Napier and the Florida Gators.
Yeah, we're going to get to that one in a moment. Let's go to.
We'll get to it.
I just wanted to say, I just think that's just funny, and it's noticeable as the years go by more and more. And now that you've got these extra teams in there, it's like, well, you got more teams, so wouldn't it make sense to now play that conference game so that everybody can see each other like a little bit sooner? But no, and so that's just a brilliant marketing deal and a brilliant sort of strategy to have that game there at the end. Well, it's just too tough. We need a break, and they've convinced everybody that, at least in the media for the most part, that's what their right is and that's what they deserve. But there are some brutal stretches, like 2-3 games for some of these teams that we're going to get into here. I wanted to kind of take a look at A&M's a little bit deeper, but I guess if we need to move on, we can.
Well, look, if you want to, go ahead.
Well, I'm trying to get it pulled up now because I couldn't read what was on the screen there, but let me get it here. Yeah, it's just a little hard for me to read. So okay. Well, never mind. I'm going to have to search for it here.
Okay.
I'll help you, Craig, here.
I got it right here.
ESPN doesn't have it updated. I was just trying to go
Notre
down real
Dame
quick.
to start the year. They then play McNeese State at Florida versus Bowling Green against Arkansas, which I think is for another year in Arlington. Then they play Missouri at home, on the road against Mississippi State, home against LSU, at South Carolina, New Mexico State in a non-conference game, and then at Auburn and home against Texas.
Yeah, and that Arkansas game is in Arlington. I mean, I commend them for playing Notre Dame. That's the one thing is you will have an Alabama, Texas like this past year, and you'll have some of those big-time games. So, that can kind of sort of make up for the fact that you're not playing as many conference games as everybody else. And an early, conference game I do think is – exciting. So you're playing Florida on the road there in week number 3 as opposed to playing, McNeese State and another team like that instead of playing Florida early on. So, to be fair to my argument that I just had, I do think it's kind of weird that not everybody plays the same amount of conference games in the same system. I find that strange.
I think at some point, and I don't know if it's going to happen overnight, but I do think at some point that's going to have to change.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe with the more open playoff field and more spots, you're not as concerned about that being an issue of you losing an extra game, so you're still going to get in. Yeah, I mean that's a pretty good run that first month, having the Irish come to town, and then 2 weeks later playing in Gainesville, whatever the Gators and Billy Napier are going to look like, and they've got an absolute murderer's row, so good luck to him. But, a lot of fun. Missouri, that'll be a great game. Arkansas is a good rivalry. LSU at home in late October. Then, though, it does get a little bit funky. I think that at Auburn, in late November, depending on where Hugh Freeze has them, could be interesting. But Texas at the end of the year, November 30th on a Saturday, at Kyle Field in College Station, that's going to be amazing pageantry. I mean, that is going to be really cool to see that get reignited. But what I do notice too is you got 2 off weeks.
Yeah.
You got 2 off weeks. You play Missouri, and then you're off. And then you go to Mississippi State, and you play LSU, and then you go to South Carolina, and then you're off again. And then you come back and you play New Mexico State. So that's where some of that buffering of the schedule really comes into play, where you, starting November, go to Columbia, and then the next couple of weeks you're going to be kind of get yourself back together and kind of breathe a little bit and then try to close out there at Auburn and Texas. But, yeah, the 2 bye weeks is an interesting little wrinkle as well.
Well, part of that is also because the season actually does start in August this year, or in 2024. So that allows for that. But I think 2 bye weeks might continue to be the norm until they reshuffle the entire calendar to make things make sense, which they don't right now.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's use Oklahoma next, Jack, if you don't mind. Oklahoma's schedule, they open up against Temple. They will then play what is a Big 12 team now with Houston, but a non-conference game next year. Tulane. I remember a couple of years ago, Tulane took them to the edge. Also, their conference games start with Tennessee at home, at Auburn, Texas in the Red River rivalry, and, of course, that game up in Dallas. Followed by South Carolina at home, at Ole Miss. There's that non-conference game tucked in at the end against Maine. At Missouri, Alabama at home, and at LSU. That's going to be interesting. The Missouri continues to build under Drinkwitz like they did this year. That could be one heck of a fun ending, but there's Oklahoma's schedule for 2024.
Yeah, so they are going to play Willie Fritz one way or the other, and they are just going to end up playing him at Houston as opposed to with Tulane. So, yeah, I mean, Temple, whatever, but Houston, we'll see what they look like with Willie Fritz. Tulane, They went and made a great hire, so let's see how much they can kind of keep their stride. So that's not just a gimme game. And then when the SEC schedule starts, I think it's exciting for Oklahoma fans to see these teams as opposed to the teams they've been seeing now for the past 20 years. There's no doubt you're going to get a little bit more excited for going to Auburn and going to Ole Miss and to Missouri again, and then having, the likes of Tennessee and Alabama rolling into town, going and closing the year at LSU. So that's a massive step up just in terms of the look of the schedule and just kind of some of the places you're going to be going to. So that's a lot of fun. But yeah, that first 5 weeks of the season, Houston and Tulane, we'll see what they look like. But Tennessee and then at Auburn, I guess we'll kind of see what they look like as well. But that Tennessee game, little Josh Heupel action, going to see the former, national championship quarterback, the last guy to win a national championship in Norman, Oklahoma as a quarterback.
Nearly a quarter a century ago.
Nearly 25 years ago. Going to be back at his old stomping grounds, and then to Auburn. Then you get that bye week before Texas. So you get a couple of weeks to prepare for UT. Like you said, that Maine gets thrown in there before you go to Missouri, and then you get an off week. So, again, those 2 off weeks and having that late game non-con schedule, I do think lightens the blow a little bit versus what kind of a grind it really would look like if you had only the one bye week and you did a non-conference more traditionally. So it makes sense to kind of give you some breathing room for everybody involved there. But Alabama and then LSU to close out those last couple weeks, you're going to need that bye week, that second bye week there.
All right, now, I want you to look at the Texas schedule. Jack, I don't know if you were able to get the new one up that I sent you, because the one I had earlier was just the non-conference schedule. But here are their games. I'm going to make note right now. You will not see a non-conference game, tucked into the back of their schedule. They don't do that. There are games off the top. They open up with Colorado State. And then they will be at home Colorado State. They will then be at Michigan. So A&M plays Notre Dame, Oklahoma in their non-conference, Houston, Tulane at Michigan. Then they play UTSA and then ULM. Then it's straight buzzsaw. Mississippi State, Oklahoma. There's a bye week before that game, just like UT has. Then Georgia at home, Vanderbilt. Florida at home, Arkansas on the road, Kentucky at home in that game on November 30th against Texas A&M and College Station.
Outside, they have, Michigan, Oklahoma, Georgia on their schedule, so not knocking that. But as far as a soft landing for year one in what is a really tough league, I do think that the Longhorns got as soft a one as you can get when you have Mississippi State, new coach, Vanderbilt.
There's not like that extra game against Tennessee or LSU.
Florida and Arkansas, coaches on the hot seat. Kentucky's, good. They're good. But and then A&M, new coach, in a ridiculous rivalry game on the that's coming back on the road. So that one could get weird. That game probably is going to get weird. In the fact that there's going to be so much emotion in College Station, Texas on November 30th. But I do. I'm not trying to knock their schedule, but I do think that it works out better for them than maybe some of the people that are still in the league.
I will say this, and you might be, if in fact maybe you're right, they're playing Michigan on the road.
Well, yeah, like
A&M's playing Notre Dame.
Yeah,
if you're one of those schools and you have a game like that in a non-conference game, and then you get a slight break based on, again, not having LSU or Tennessee, adding on to whatever you have, okay with that. Oklahoma, remember, would have been playing Georgia again, but now, because those games were canceled with the SEC developing, that would not be on their schedule.
Yeah, that week 2 trip to Ann Arbor is a really tough game. That'll be a lot of fun and massive TV matchup, and I'm sure a great atmosphere as well. I think having both Oklahoma and Texas with the bye weeks before that game to make that even is probably a good call, just so that, one doesn't have the advantage over the other. But, I see where Paul's coming from. You got that Michigan game. I don't think you're worried about any of the other 4, though. Mississippi State's your only other is your first SEC game before the bye, and that's at home. And, who knows with Jeff Lebby in year number 1 what they look like. But then you get that bye week to prepare for Oklahoma. But that Oklahoma-Georgia back-to-back, that's big time, getting both of those teams back-to-back. But to Paul's point after that, at Vandy, so that's a nice landing after playing Oklahoma and Georgia and an off week. And then that last month, I mean, there's 2 road games against 2 traditional rivals, so those could get really weird. Florida and Kentucky, respectable teams. Who knows how good or bad or wherever they are. But I get what you mean as far as not having like LSU in the back end amongst that mix of teams. So I think if you can navigate, it's kind of a tale of 3 parts. There's your first part that's that Michigan game, but other than that, you feel good. Then your break. Then that second part, which is only a 3-game stretch. Now, that's the tough one. That's going to kind of be the determining factor in what that whole season probably looks like with Oklahoma and Georgia back-to-back. But then at Vandy and another break. And then that last month and, a couple rivalry games and then Kentucky and Florida. So that'll be a fun, fireworks-filled last month of the season for Texas and a lot of tradition and history there. But, yeah, there's kind of 3 chapters here.
They get to keep, as you mentioned, Oklahoma, Arkansas, A&M.
That's awesome.
All former teams that used to be, when OU was a part of the Big 8 back in the day.
Texas will be the flashpoint for why they're going to go to 9 because they do have these, those 3 rivals. And unless they go to 9 or change it, then, they're not going to play A&M every year. So, and that, then they wouldn't play Arkansas as often. So they're going to change that. They just didn't have the cojones to do it this year. But, while we're on the SEC schedule, I do think that Florida deserves to be commended, and that's a rare thing for me. But at least on paper, they have come up with possibly the hardest schedule that you could ever see.
All right, let's go. I don't have a graphic of theirs, but we have it in front of us.
Yeah, I've got it right here.
And we'll get chat room responses on this. They open up against Miami at home.
Yes.
Then they play Samford.
And let's keep in mind, Billy Napier is on somewhat of a warm seat at this point. I mean, it would be fair to say that there's some proving need to be done here in this next year.
Yeah. So
all right, Samford,
where legendary coach Bobby Bowden went to school. But this is the only game on their schedule that I can promise you Florida will win.
All right, let's see. A&M, so they have 3 consecutive games at home in Gainesville.
Yeah.
The Aggies. Mississippi State on the road, new coach with Jeff Lebby. Then an off week. Then UCF, which is going to have a lot of emotions in that game, as any of the Florida schools when they play each other.
Yeah. So again, they'll be favored in a lot of these. But as far as when you talk about Miami, we don't know who their quarterback's going to be, and they're probably going to. They were more talented this year than they were last year. And they'll probably be more talented again. So Miami's tough to start out. And Miami fans, nobody hates the Gators as much as Florida State does, but Miami really doesn't like them because when Miami got good in the 80s, Florida quit playing.
No, they did. Yeah, back when they had those great teams.
This, they do it like once a decade. They do a home and home, and then that's it. So
they're back on the schedule.
Yeah, they're back on the schedule.
UCF in a non-conference game is a little bit dicey, of course.
Yeah, especially in the middle, like right in the middle of the year like that. Yeah,
Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and by the way, your arch rival Florida State.
So in the last month of the season, after their second bye, they play the 2 teams that barely missed this year's college football playoff, which are both their 2 biggest rivals. They play a team in the college football playoff at their place. They play a team who is on a down year 9-3, and they play a team in Ole Miss who is 10-2 and would have made a 12-team playoff this year. All of these teams, maybe LSU wouldn't have been, they'd be the outside looking in, but all of these teams would have been in the discussion for the college football playoff at a 12-team this year. That is a stretch.
Yeah, and that doesn't include, again, the emotional start against Miami that used to be a rivalry, and then they backed away. I'll never forget, and this is back in the 80s or whatever year it was, when Miami smoked them like 30-0 in an opening game, and you could just the differences, of course, in Miami and everybody was pretty obvious.
And it wasn't like they played the other one and then went on. They lost and then canceled it.
Yeah,
like it was one of those things like you guys have to play somebody else next year because we're not doing it.
So good luck, Billy Napier and the Gators.
That's that's an interesting wrinkle for next season with the season starting when it does. So how that looks across schedules with the extra the week to breathe will be really interesting in college football. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking at toughest schedules, that Florida schedule, especially that third chapter after the second bye week of Georgia at Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, at Florida State. I mean, I don't know if there's a tougher 5 consecutive weeks, no buys, 5 consecutive weeks of that. I can't imagine that there's a tougher schedule on paper than that. There's just I don't even know how that'd be possible. Georgia at Texas, LSU, Ole Miss at Florida State. So, yikes! You better hope that you got about 5 wins at that point, or 6 already if you're Billy Napier. And I see Sanford is 1, and then not a guaranteed one anywhere else on that schedule. So, yeah, he's gonna have his work cut out for him. That's for sure.
One note on another transfer portal. We'll come back from the break and discuss the linebacker from UTSA and where he's going to be at least visiting. And with all of what you've seen, and we know what the Big 12 schedule is, and again, a lot of things that are going on with the 12-team playoff. Do you change your expectations of what is the standard or the accepted win-loss record for your college football team? Yes, you want to go undefeated, but does that change now because 9-3 is going to get you in the college football playoff, or most likely a team or two? We'll come back with that, your feedback also. This is 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental, Robinson, Texas. My dentist is Dr. Steve Childress. He's been absolutely phenomenal. A lot of you even discuss it in the chat room. If it's not a crown, then it's a root canal. If it's not a bridge being fixed, then it's a retainer. If it's not that, then it's a cavity. All of that is what I've been through, but I feel more confident with what I have and where I am with my dental work than ever before. But it took a game plan. It took the process of building like you would if you take over a football team. Let's do this now. Let's do this next. And then let's also look ahead, and this needs to be done too. It never ends when you probably didn't take care of your teeth like I didn't for a long time. Not just brushing your teeth or flossing your teeth or making sure you don't but I didn't do well with that. And I've been paying for it, literally. But Dr. Steve Childress and Stonewood Dental has got me in a pretty darn good place. In fact, a great place. After the last time I was there, I sent him a text. I said, man, you're my godsend when it comes to dental work. And he is. Dr. Steve Childress, Stonewood Dental, Robinson, Texas.
Don't miss the Wrap Up the Year sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco. As the year comes to a close, we're offering unbeatable deals and a wide selection of new 2023 Jeep models like the Grand Cherokee L, Renegade, Gladiator, Wrangler, and the Wrangler 4XE. In addition to incredible savings, we're also offering generous trade-in values for your current vehicle. Upgrade to a newer model while getting the most out of your trade-in. Hurry in, these deals won't last long. Shop our great selection of new inventory and start the new year in style.
Pioneer Steel & Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel & Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel & Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor Alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor Alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor Alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Kim Coulter, you're right. I do need to be an investor in Stonewood Dental. I basically am as a patient. He is amazing. So a couple of you had said that, yeah, your expectation standard of a record that, 10-2 used to be like, that's what you had to do. Now that could change because a 9-3 team could get in, depending on what probably conference you're in or who you played. So, Craig, you brought this up. I think it will change. I just think it'll be hard for some of those schools that are expecting 11-1 and 12-0, no less than that, until they get into the playoffs with 2 or 3 losses and have success in the playoff. Then they'll kind of get used to that.
Yeah, I think it's going to take an adjustment for everybody. Next year, as we were talking about, everybody having those couple bye weeks because when the season starts, it's going to be kind of a weird adjustment, just something that's kind of different and don't know quite how that's going to look for better. Certainly can't be worse. Nobody's going to be complaining about having an extra week to prepare. But, that's far less significant than your topic there, which, I do think is going to change some expectations. I think probably mostly with winning conference titles. I think because you don't have to win a conference title to get into the playoff unless you're some of the conferences. But, for example, if you're Tennessee and you can't get over that Georgia hump or you can't get over that Georgia-Alabama or LSU hump and you lose a couple games, that's going to suck that you lost to 2 teams that you didn't want to lose to or what have you, but you can still get in the playoff. Mm-hmm. So does winning the SEC East, well, I guess there won't be divisions now, but does not getting into the championship game and not winning the SEC on a regular basis matter as much? I would think that if it's a 20-year drought, that's going to build up pressure-wise, and you're going to want to get that release of getting back there and winning that. But maybe it's not as big of a deal because, we finished 3rd in the best conference or in this conference or that conference, and in that one particularly, you're still going to be able to get in. Now, for everybody else though, are there 2 teams from the Big 12 on a regular basis? Are there 2-3 teams from the ACC on a regular basis? What does that look like? Because I think we all feel pretty confident there's going to be at least 3 from the Big 10 and 3 from the SEC, at least. And wouldn't surprise me in the slightest to see 4 from the SEC if they could somehow finagle that. You know what I mean?
It would have to be some sort of a tragic year for that not to happen.
But it wouldn't put it past them. Yeah, well, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah,
Paul's saying it had to take a tragic year for that to not happen.
Yeah. For 3-3 and not for 4 right. And again,
if a conference gets 4 in, they would have to have just an amazing run, no matter who the conference is. But everybody else would then have to have a down year.
No, I think y'all are no. I think
you're opposite, Smoak.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm saying for there not to be 3 SEC and 3 Big Ten teams in every year, it would have to be some sort of ridiculous year, ridiculous where
Clemson and Florida State are both unbeaten except 1 loss to the other.
Because think about it, there's the ACC champ, there's the Big 12 champ, there's the G5. Well, that's only 3 spots, so that leaves you 9 spots.
Yeah.
So that's 6 spots if you just give each of those 3.
Yeah.
There's still 3 spots left.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Anyway, a conference to get in 4 would be would I bet against it? No. Would I bet against it? No.
Look at the top 25 right now.
No, I know.
How many teams from the SEC you think are getting into this thing?
Yeah, and that's why I love it when Dellinger used to put we're a 12-team playoff this year, and I think there were 4 SEC teams involved this year.
That's what I think most people's expectations are, is you're going to have 4 from that league and then 3 to whatever.
Actually, there's going to be 7 at large, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Because the Pac-12 is no longer a part of it.
So that reinforces that, there's 4 conferences that'll probably all get their champ, and then you'll get the G5, And then there's 7 spots. And so that's what all the politicking about the auto bids and all, that's what all the concern has been, is how do you prevent this from just becoming the SEC Big Ten Invitational, basically.
Probably can't unless you just
as opposed to the 4-team Invitational that it currently is. Emphasis on Invitational. But, I think that because of that, because you could finish 4th in your league if you're in the SEC or the Big Ten and still get a shot at playing for a national title, I think you're not as worried about being 9-3 as in a year where it's just a 4-team. You have no shot at the playoff. You're probably not even getting to your conference championship game at 9-3. And so and then you're going to just a bowl game, whatever that bowl game would be. It might be a nice bowl game, but it's not like as big of a deal as you went 9-3. You're going to play in a major playoff game right out of the gate. So I think that's where it's going to be a little bit different of having 3 losses and not playing for every single imaginable thing won't be as big of a deal because you'll be in the playoff.
You could end up 9-4, losing the playoff in the first round and still feel pretty good. Is that what you're saying?
No, I was just saying that you could I'm saying that you can lose 3 games, and in a normal year, you're probably not playing for a conference title.
All right.
You're not going to any playoff. You're just playing in a good bowl game.
Yeah.
You go 9-3 now.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
it doesn't matter that you're not in the conference title game because you're still probably going to the playoff. If you're in the SEC or if you're in the Big Ten, emphasis lean on the SEC especially, or 10-2 or whatever. Now, okay, well, we didn't get to play for the conference title, and
you got
that's
a bye
okay.
week.
Do what?
Yeah, if you don't play for the conference championship, it's not a bad deal.
You get a bye week and you go to the playoffs. That's my point, is that if you lose 3 games, that would be like, oh, great, we're going to the Cotton Bowl. That's cool on a good year. But now, you're in the playoffs. So that's where I'm saying that it changes expectations, that 9-3 is not bad season, but it's not as above average of a season. It's actually a pretty good season because you went to the playoff, or at least that's how I imagine teams will take that, because making the playoff will now be the next banner that people start to put up.
And what I said,
playoff appearances.
And what I was saying is you could go 9-4, get in the playoff and lose in the first round, but still feel you got into the playoff, and so it's somewhat successful. Now, Alabama, Georgia, and them, that's not going to be the case for them.
Everybody's going to have to adjust their expectations. Look, we're still seeing people slow to the fact on NIL and that it's legal. You'll have people like, Alabama's doing it the wrong way. They're paying everybody. Well, so is everybody. It's not illegal. The only reason you feel it's wrong is because they told you it was for a long time before they changed the rule, or, the colleges haven't been fully out to embrace it yet.
So, Paul, 9-3 FSU makes the playoff. Is that good for you?
Look, that's the new expectation. If it's a down year, 9-3,
okay.
That should be their floor.
I was going to say 9-3 should be the floor for teams like that, but I still don't totally agree with you. I don't think going 9-3 and then losing your first playoff game is going to be satisfying. I think that it will depend
as much.
It won't sting as much, but it will depend on who you are and kind of where you are.
Let's say it's Iowa.
Going 9-3 and making the playoff, I think they would have loved that this year.
Yep.
They won more than 9 games, and they're not playing for jack when it comes to the playoffs.
Exactly,
so I think for them that'd be a pretty good year. I think it also depends, though, if you go 9-3 and then you go lose to Liberty in the first game at home.
Yeah.
Then that's gonna, that's gonna be a different story. It's gonna depend on what that playoff game looks like in the long run. But for Iowa as an example, they would take that over what they've got right now.
Any team that's quite not even in the conversation. Okay, here's another thing. We may say 3 teams in the Big Ten or 3 teams in the SEC. Let's just use that as the line. Think about who won't make it. If you take 3 from the Big Ten plus the incoming schools, if they're all pretty good, Washington, Oregon, USC, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, someone's missing out. I mean, they are now anyway, but if you don't make it and you got all those just the Big Ten, not to mention what the SEC is going to be loaded up with.
Well, who would have been – that's where it comes into play of who's making it the ACC besides Florida State.
I know.
Who's making it besides Texas in the Big 12?
Yeah. No, I know.
You going to put Oklahoma State in there after that conference title game?
No.
I don't think so, right?
Nope, not
that's
at all.
where it starts to, become murky on how that's all going to look. And that's why I think, too, it matters on, kind of what that 13th game ends up being and where and how that all, I think it'll be a case-by-case basis on whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for a team to lose that first playoff game. It'd be one thing to go on the road, you lose a close game, but hey, you were 9-4, you lost at Florida State in Tallahassee in the first round in a close game, and you were in the playoff like, hey, good year. But if you were 9-3, you lose to freaking Tulane on your home field to close the season, hey, you made the playoff, but damn, that was a sorry way to exit, you know?
You go 9-3 and lose to Tulane in a bowl game, then it's different than if you go 9-3 and lose in the playoff, but it's still a loss. All right, David, Paul, and Craig. Being the playoff committee set a standard that a missing player affects your playoff status, should the transfers and undergrads to the NFL be done before bowl selection? So does that? I thank you. It's over streaming. Thank you very much. So with the way things are, will this slow down opt-outs? Or maybe
some of the opt-outs.
Will it change the transfer portal?
No.
Or declaring the opt-outs would be declaring for the NFL draft?
It can't change they've got a problem with the transfer portal. Jack brought this up to me. The transfer portal has a problem in that you have to, in order to transfer, you have to do it within academic calendars. So unless they change the academic calendar, and not everybody has the same one, right? I mean, it's around the same time, but one school can be done on December 10th and back on January 10th, and another school can be done on December 17th and back on January 4th. I mean, it's different everywhere. So in order to fit in the windows to where if you're Malik Murphy and you're transferring, part of the reason you can't play in the bowl game for Texas is if they win the game in the first college football playoff game, you will have to be on campus at your next school matriculating
when they
at a
play the championship
when they play the championship game. So,
and then add on to that, there's now going to be extra rounds.
They have to they have to figure out a way to change the entire calendar in college football because it does not make sense.
Here's one, okay,
and it's like everything happening in December is not sustainable just for human being and work hours.
All right, here's a question for you too, Craig. Go ahead.
Well, I thought it was funny to see some of the Texas reactions. There was a couple in particular like, man, this stupid calendar, and I understand why. I'm not knocking the complaint, but the response was funny because it was, this stupid calendar, Malik should be able to play, and then somebody's like, yeah, there's this thing called school that these players go to, and there's semesters that they are a part of, and classes, and there's a calendar for those things because this is college football, and it's almost like everybody needed a reminder of, there's the classes they have to worry about, not the playoff dates.
Student-athlete, if you want to
but to put to everybody's point on that of, I don't see how that's sustainable because it's one thing to lose Malik Murphy, your backup quarterback, in a 14 playoff. You just got to get through a couple of games. If you're talking about a 12-team playoff, especially for those that aren't getting a bye, and you lose a Malik Murphy, and you got a quarterback who's maybe already a little wobbly, then that's a huge loss to not have a backup quarterback who's a big part of your team. And if Quinn Ewers goes down again in round one, and you've got maybe 3 more games to play. I mean, I guess in their case, that's the case of, Arch Manning, so people would be like, that'd be great. But the point being,
ready?
You still don't actually know, even though he looked pretty good in that one quarter.
But you'd rather have Malik Murphy for this playoff run. So, they're going to have to at least analyze and look into how those dates will work with the transfer portal and expanded playoff.
Bracket Cat, I have your question for Craig. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show. Also, if you're a Texas fan, if, in fact, you knew that Ewers was wobbly and may not play, what would your reaction be if Malik Murphy entered the transfer portal? When we come back, Max Olssen, theathletic.com, and this is 365 Sports. Texas, I'm sorry, I with the wrong one. That's also in the break. Pioneer Stew and Pipe, Pioneer Boys since 1943, brand new location, east of I-35 on Highway 6 and Loop 340. What a family. What an unbelievable business. They have weathered the storm where a lot of other big box national brand companies came into Waco and kept getting bigger, better, faster, and stronger, and Pioneer Stew and Pipe did not blink. They still, because of how they treat you, the customer, because of the product they had, even if they didn't have as much, even if the big box stores could ask or maybe even lowered their prices to try to run you out of business, they did not give up. And they just kept on fighting. They kept on producing great customer service, and they kept on producing the great material. But now, They're now one of the big boys with all of the material, better and better efficiency when it comes to the products and how you can pick it up. Heavy steel, metal, pipe. Pioneer Steel and Pipe. PioneerBoys.com.
The right call can make all the difference on and off the field. I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. When it's time for a new car, truck, or SUV, Bird Colgan Ford is the right call. Come check out our award-winning lineup of best-selling models in their class, like the Mustang, Explorer, Expedition, F-150, and Super Duty. Make the right call for your next vehicle at Bird Colgan Ford. Bird Colgan Ford proudly supports Baylor Athletics. Sic 'em Bears.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, is your holiday item superstore. Half spiral hams, 8 to 10 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Pit hams, 12 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Bone-in hams, 18 to 22 pounds for $3.40 per pound. Whole raw turkeys from 12 to 16 pounds for $2.50 a pound. Whole smoked turkeys, that's smoked turkeys at 9 to 12 pounds for $3.75 a pound. And mini pit hams, 6 to 8 pounds for $5.99 a pound. And don't forget, they have full service butcher shop where you can find what you want: pork, poultry, seafood, and beef. And I bring up the beef because big beef tenderloin or a prime rib. Brian Bauer and the Bauer family, full service bakery with fresh baked kolaches every morning and bread and cold beer and wine. Tailgate needs from pellet fuel to charcoal. Waco Custom Marketplace and the holiday items, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
When we moved to Texas, we were like fish out of water. We didn't know anyone in our neighborhood until our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent came to the house. She was so helpful and reassuring, a friendly face with that Texan hospitality I'd heard about. When we purchased a Texas Farm Bureau insurance policy, we knew we were making the right choice. We knew our family would be protected.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. GXG works with partners and donors to offer a suite of options to student athletes, including connections with local businesses and nonprofits, entrepreneurial development, and other avenues to broaden the NIL profile of student athletes. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Donors may wish to support the general fund or direct funds to specific sports. Oversight of the NIL Fund is managed by the Board of Directors of Startup Waco and the Baylor NIL Advisory Council. GXG is a program of Startup Waco, a tax-exempt organization under Internal Revenue Code Section 501c3. Donors should consult their tax advisors regarding the tax deductibility of donations to GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. Welcome back to 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. It's time for our weekly segment with Max Olssen of The Athletic, brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus, and best in metal, steel, and pipe for large or small projects, with 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943.
Max Olssen, theathletic.com, has nothing to do, the transfer portal, the NIL, all of what's going on with the NCAA, and yes, eventually football games starting this weekend, eventually the semifinals. Max, have you ever seen so many things converge at one time?
Oh, gosh, don't even ask me about the NCAA stuff, please. I literally do not have time for that today, guys. Literally. Now?
We won't. Has there anything in particular with the transfer portal surprised you with a player going one place or another?
I think that you're starting to see the quarterback market shake out a little bit here. Obviously you saw Malik Murphy go in yesterday for Texas. He's not officially in yet, but everyone's kind of expecting that. I think it's kind of decision time for some of the key guys out there. I think Cameron Ward, what he decides to do between, Miami, Florida State, whoever else ends up being in the mix there, that's going to affect where Will Howard ends up and DJ and some of these other guys. I think while it's still early, I think as the commitments kind of start flying in here over the past few days, you're starting to see a few teams really emerge as the contenders for, I guess you'd say, Portal King this year. Been really impressed by what Notre Dame's done, not just getting Riley Leonard, but picking up good pieces at wide receiver, RJ Oben from Duke. I think they're doing a nice job. They've been pretty aggressive. I think you're seeing Ole Miss is about to make a run here and pick up some really good players. Some of these teams, Ole Miss, Oregon, Texas, Oklahoma, I think you're really seeing them step up here, and they're definitely investing in getting the good ones in the portal here. I really like what Texas Tech has done too. I think there's some Big 12 teams that have a chance to really benefit. And I think Texas Tech is off to a really sneaky good start here with some of the players they're picking up. But, man, it is dizzying to follow, that's for sure.
Max, Cam Ward visiting FSU this weekend. So is DJ Uiagalelei. He's there as well. Let's just say Cam Ward takes another visit or two. How much does that push those guys waiting on whether – if they're option 2 to Cam Ward, like a Will Howard might be at Miami, to waiting or making a decision otherwise?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting little bit, like a little dance that we got here, especially because one factor that is kind of hanging over all of this is that when the dead period kicks in here next Monday, these transfers, they can't go take a bunch of official visits. You can go take the unpaid visit where you go tour a campus by yourself. But this is kind of the critical weekend here for these guys to take their OVs between now and early January. And so, I think on the school side, as much as you want to be in the Cam Ward sweepstakes, it's kind of like, all right, we're going to need a decision here pretty quickly because, like, if you're Miami and you've got Will Howard ready potentially, do you take that commitment or you kind of keep fighting here? I think same thing with Florida State. Obviously, they've targeted DJ from the start since DJ went in the portal. And so while it's exciting to go head-to-head with Miami on this one, I think these are all pretty interconnected here, and it's time for these guys to make decisions. And if Cam Ward wants to take his time, I think that's going to make it complicated for some of these players. And as much as you understand Cam Ward, wanting to maximize the leverage and whatever the collectives are willing to pay and all that kind of stuff, I think that, you got to, these teams are kind of waiting on you to make a move so they can go get more players in the portal here, and others can figure it out. So that game of musical chairs is pretty real at that position, and I think we're going to start getting some answers here pretty soon.
So with all these dominoes starting to fall, Max, so what are your thoughts on Malik Murphy joining the fray just yesterday? I mean, it's interesting just from a playoff standpoint, right, that he won't be available for Texas. It'll be Arch if something, God forbid, were to happen to Quinn. But now throwing his hat into the ring, would you presume that maybe he kind of already has an idea of what chair is still available, or how do you view Malik Murphy now jumping into the pool?
Yeah, first of all, I think that whole situation is unfortunate. I think that really sucks for both sides. That you kind of get it. This is the way the calendar is set up right now. But you wish that Malik Murphy could stay with Texas and just wait and do this after Texas is done playing in the postseason. And so I get why, there's a bunch of different factors for him and his people that he's got to weigh here. But you wish that weren't the case when Texas is trying to make a run in the national championship. I think Malik Murphy, it's interesting when you talk to personnel people on him. I think that going into the year, a lot of excitement, a guy that they really circled as somebody that is probably going in the portal and is going to get some pretty strong offers here. I think what he put on tape against Texas was maybe, or what he put on tape in his 2 starts for Texas, I think maybe a little bit of I don't want to say reality check, but just like a pretty good summary of like where he's at. He made some big time throws in those games against BYU, Kansas State. He made some mistakes against K-State in that game that went to overtime. Obviously, they won both those games, and he deserves a ton of credit for keeping them in the race. But I think teams are going to be very excited about the size, the big arm, the tools, just the potential there, and the fact that he's still a redshirt freshman. He can get a multi-year starter there. Where he goes, I think is super interesting because I think there's a few teams here that have been pretty quiet lately. I think, you talk to other people that are in the quarterback market, they want to know what Ohio State's going to do, and they want to know what USC is going to do. And I think Auburn's been quiet, even though I think Auburn's in the mix here too, like in the market. Some of these teams that you're kind of wondering, wait, who's their guy? Who, when you're kind of playing matchmaker here, hard to tell what they're going to do. And I think Malik Murphy is going to be getting calls from those schools and plenty more.
So, Max, Dylan Raiola was in the news this week because the 5-star commitment to Georgia, apparently visiting Lincoln. Nebraska was talking to Kyle McCord. That appears to be now off. Are they going to screw this up and end up with nobody, including their commitment, the kid from Nebraska that was committed to Missouri?
I thought you were going to ask me, is Nebraska back?
No.
That was going to be my question.
No.
We're going to save that one for next week. Okay, got it. I think.
Come on.
I think that I think that things ending there with Kyle McCord is kind of tips things a little bit in terms of like probably hinting that things are looking good for Dylan Raiola in Nebraska.
Okay.
I certainly don't blame Danny Kaelin for taking the visit to Michigan State this weekend and trying to figure out his options, because when you're in the same class as the kid, and if Dylan Raiola were to come to Nebraska, everybody would want him to be the guy and the starter right away and stuff. I think that factors into all these decisions for the Nebraska quarterback situation, not to mention the guys that are already in the room. So I think, cautious optimism, it's looking good for Nebraska with Dylan Raiola. Obviously, you're going head to head with Georgia, and I think that's never an easy W by any means, but extremely interesting that this has popped up as we approach the signing day deadline here. Ultimately, did Dylan Raiola always want to be at Nebraska, or is it more a situation of, Carson Beck probably coming back at Georgia? You feel like there's a better path to playing time there, but by going to your dad's alma mater, that battle, I think if you're a Husker fan, you're very optimistic, but probably a little scary too. The fact that this might actually happen,
especially if he's using them to get more money from Georgia, that might be it too.
Yeah.
Well, who knows? Who knows? These are wild times.
Max, so do you think that Nebraska would still get a portal quarterback, just maybe not somebody to the level of Kyle McCord, if they do proceed with Raiola in that way?
I think at the start of December, I think the Nebraska perspective was we're going to go get a transfer quarterback, and we can afford a good one. You knew that Jeff Sims was going to be moving on. Obviously, that didn't work out, and they needed to go get one who they felt like, especially with the defense that they have, that if you go get a pretty steady quarterback who doesn't turn it over, got a chance to win a lot more games next year. I think the whole Dylan Raiola, that whole thing restarting, was not something that was really anticipated by Matt Rule and his staff a couple of weeks ago. But now that door is open again, I think that he's extremely talented, and I think obviously the fan base wants that to happen. It's kind of one of those situations where it's like, drop everything you're doing and go all in on this. I think that's kind of what this has turned out to be. So if you get him on board, it's going to affect the other guys in your room. And yeah, you're probably going to have to go find a veteran who can come in and, fill out that room. But yeah, a lot to play out there.
Max, one of the decisions that has been made, there's a lot. We can spend all day just talking about the decisions already made, much less the ones that haven't been made. But Dylan Gabriel heading to his third school, playing for the Oregon Ducks, replacing Bo Nix. So what are your thoughts on that move?
I think it makes a lot of sense on both sides. And I don't think, like, I think it certainly seems to me like Oklahoma fans are excited for the Jackson Arnold era to get underway here, as much as Dylan Gabriel was, the All Big 12 quarterback this year and at his best season and everything. I think it's kind of a good deal for both sides, because I think, and Dylan Gabriel has said this, the reality of the situation is he didn't get invited to the Senior Bowl. I think the draft feedback was late round pick or possibly undrafted, as good as he was this year. And so that's a little bit scary for a guy that, even though he's been in college for a long time, you get that kind of feedback after having your best season yet. You're like, okay, well, we probably got to do something to improve that. And certainly you can make more money at Oregon next year than you would as a practice squad guy in the NFL. So I think it makes a ton of sense for Dylan Gabriel. And he's really, I think, the right fit for this Oregon team, because I think they feel like they've got a lot coming back. And look, they might still go get Dante Moore to be the backup and be the future guy. But I think that's a team that didn't want to go take a guy who's a freshman or a sophomore and kind of develop a multi-year starter. I think they feel like, even though they're moving into the Big Ten and there's new challenges with that, I think they feel ready, like they're ready to run it back here and contend for a playoff spot next year in the 12 team. And so you want to go get a veteran who you really trust can do it at a high level to replace Bo Nix. And I think Dylan Gabriel is kind of a perfect option there if that's what you're trying to do.
Max, is the schedule of the early signing day, the opt-outs, the transfer portal, and everything else above, plus the 12-team playoff starting next year, sustainable?
No, definitely not. No, it's gonna cause problems. You think about it, like, Willie Fritz takes the Houston job this year. If Tulane's like the 12th seed in that playoff, is he just like stuck in that job? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what how is the timing going to work on some of these, even just with the coaching carousel? And our guys going to be like willing to leave their job when the team's in the playoff to go take another job? Like we saw Brian Kelly leave Notre Dame for LSU. Like, it's hard to picture that, but it's not impossible. I think that you've got that problem. I think you've got, ultimately as December just continues to get absolutely dominated by the transfer portal, I don't think that's great for high school recruiting. And I think ultimately, like, it should, if the leaders are being forward thinking, I think it's time to start talking a little bit more seriously about, do you do like an end of July signing period and just let these guys get it out of the way and then have another one in February or something like that? Because I just don't think the December signing period is, I think that is making less and less sense the way this is developed. And I mean, you've got coaching staffs that are traveling to bowl sites while also trying to like take commitments from the portal and do in-homes and stuff like that. It's just really chaotic. And I think the 12 team is going to make that worse for sure.
Max Olssen. Paul, anything else?
No. Other than, Max, if
Paul, which quarterback do you want at Florida State? Cam Ward, without a doubt?
Yeah, I would say Cam. Like, I wouldn't mind. Like, I'm not going to complain about either one, but Cam Ward would be the one, I think he's got the higher ceiling, and I hope that he's not the kind of guy that's just swayed by having dinner at a fancy restaurant with a big time rapper.
Rick Ross, the boss.
Yeah. Like, I don't know what FSU can roll out in that. I mean, we got T-Pain, so maybe we can get T-Pain. So
T-Pain, okay, that's a good offering. Yeah, it's wild to just even keep up with like where these guys even visiting, because these things just develop so quickly. And I don't know. Do we even know who's the Baylor quarterback next year?
Well,
I guess we'll know a week or two from now, right?
Yeah.
Do we even know?
DeQuan Finn's on campus right now, we think.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, probably. If it's not him, then who the heck knows? If it's not him, then I'm not sure.
If they didn't call at least whoever's handling Malik Murphy, that would be silly not to. I mean, I think they should at least contact him, whether or not that fits or not, or he's interested or not.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I don't envy that situation for Spav to get that job, and before you even really assess your roster and what you're going to do, you're just like, all right, go get a quarterback. So. Well, I'm interested to see kind of, certainly you can tailor it to some of these guys like Finn is a really dynamic athlete. And I think he can tailor things to what he does a little bit, but very, very, very up in the air there in terms of offensive identity when you don't have the QB yet.
Yeah. I mean, well, on that, I mean, it does seem now, I guess like it was about 2 weeks ago, but shoot, Blake Shapen, I mean, to Mississippi State, small world that he ends up with Jeff Lebby. Yeah, I mean, I guess that seemed like it was forever ago, but shoot, what are your thoughts on Blake Shapen heading down to Starkville to play for Jeff Lebby?
How many, I was just writing about Will Howard earlier today, how many like quarterbacks that have played in Big 12 title games have transferred. That's those two, Spencer Sanders, like the list goes on.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I think that's, especially with kind of the way this market is setting up, and you kind of know which guys are in, but you don't totally know who all is going in. I thought it was interesting that Jeff Lebby moved pretty quickly to go get who he thinks is his guy. I think the thing with Shapen is just in talking to other coaches, like really like his moxie. I think his good football, like his good tape, is pretty good. And I think certainly that offensive system, like it's going to be interesting to see kind of how that team, that offense comes together, because they've lost a lot to the portal, as you'd expect after a coaching change. Their running back Woody Marks is one of the top running backs available in the portal. They've lost some wideouts. So, Jeff Lebby facing a big reload there in terms of getting playmakers to support Blake Shapen. So, I think fresh start probably a good thing for him, but very TBD in terms of who he's playing with there.
Max, great stuff as always. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
Max Olssen, theathletic.com, with us on 365 Sports. At a mouthful to digest, and glad we had him on.
Yeah, I mean, the Blake Shapen thing, I hated the timing of that because it happened Friday at like 6 o'clock. It's like everybody's done now. I mean, as far as like radio and whatnot, I mean, the message boards were always active, but now, I mean, the timing of it makes me not even think a few days later even about it, quite frankly. I'm only reminded about it when we bring up Daquan Finn and the fact that he's visiting, because now they need a quarterback as opposed to still probably needing one regardless of what Shapen, if Shapen had come back. But if they don't get Finn, then I have no earthly idea of where they might pivot to after that. I know there's some talk on the boards about what that could look like, but we'll see how his visit goes. And very interesting, the timing of Malik Murphy. I know that's going to be a hot debate now, is just the fact that with a bigger playoff, how are you going to handle guys in the transfer portal? I mean, how are you going to – you can't have all these guys sitting in the portal and not playing in these super meaningful games, right? So what do you do about that if you're college football? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm very curious to see where he ends up.
The interesting thing when you look at who's left in the portal, and it comes to, look, if you want another Sawyer Robertson type, there's plenty of those guys who haven't, if you're just going to have somebody else to battle it out with Sawyer. But if you want somebody who has experience that you think maybe has a leg up to win the starting job, or somebody like Daquan Finn, who's, the conference player of the year, where he's coming from, that could send you, on a maybe a much higher track a lot faster, there's not, guys after that are just sitting around.
And I would argue he's not even, but I mean, experience-wise he is. But like as far as the big name guys, they're already pretty much attached, committed, or they're down to like a couple schools. To your point is, there's not like another DJU floating around coming down the pipeline. Or I mean, those guys are all pretty much spoken for. So yeah, you better have had your guys sort of targeted, and there will be another rush in the spring. There'll be more guys eventually. But
Taylor McHargue will join us in the next segment to discuss some of the quarterbacks, either who have committed elsewhere and or are out there. So right now, you guys talk amongst yourself. Who are DJ, Cam Ward, and who are two or three others in that same bracket, if at all?
Well, I would say that Dante Moore is.
UCLA.
Will Howard.
Yeah, Will Howard is.
Will Howard's in a lot more than Dante Moore.
Kyle
Who's
McCord?
Who's the guy that was at Mississippi State?
Will Rogers.
I mean, would you be against if you were a team that needed a quarterback?
No, but I mean, he is. I think part of the reason he's been slow played a little bit is because he's played injured this year, and so it was also wasn't. It was an arm injury, and that's somewhat important if you're a quarterback.
Depends. Yeah.
I mean, so he's got this elbow thing, so people are going to wonder about that. So but then once you get past the Will Rogers of the world, okay, so if you want another guy who's comparable to Blake Shapen, who's played a lot, and there's not those guys left, because now.
Yeah, one of the things he has done is that even though he didn't play much the year that he had that the run against Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game, he's played a lot the last couple of years. He has thrown a lot of passes, so he is experienced. You kind of know who he is, and, I'm not sure that anyone's going to jump at him, but Mississippi State feels like they found their guy. Am I right that Mississippi State also received another quarterback in the transfer portal after Shapen? Why do I think that way?
Hold on. I'll tell you all the players that Mississippi State has gotten. Okay. They actually just got an offensive line.
One thing he has done is, like Bill Parcells has said, he's thrown a ton of passes, like 700-800 passes in his career, or maybe not quite that many. So at least he's thrown the ball and played quite a bit.
Yeah. No, they did get an offensive lineman, which Blake Shapen surely going to be thrilled about. Did they get another quarterback? They have three guys so far committed from Mississippi State in the portal. Blake Shapen, Ethan Miner, the offensive lineman I talked about, and Kedrick Bingley-Jones, who came in from North Carolina. He is a defensive lineman.
Okay, that would have been weird if they had gotten him to come in and all of a sudden. I just, for some reason, thought maybe
they did get They might have had a visit this week from a quarter, like a high school guy.
What about KJ Jefferson? Where is he?
He's not in the portal yet.
Okay.
He's not in the portal yet, and I'm starting to wonder if he's not going to go in the portal, if he's just going to go pro.
Lester Lee, Mississippi State, got a high school quarterback, Paul. He was a 4-star and former Oregon commit.
There we go. That's who they got. That's what you were thinking about. But yeah, I mean, there's the guy from Holy Cross, Matthew Sluka, I think is interesting for some teams. He put up some big numbers and at a lower level, but again, like that's not what. If you're Dave Aranda, you probably don't want to go all in on a guy who's an FCS quarterback, and bring him in, and then Sawyer Robertson wins that anyway, and then what have you done, right? I think you want somebody that you think, and maybe he doesn't, but
I mean, I get your point, but
you got to take what you can get.
I don't know what guaranteed starter they're going to go get out of the portal at this point. I guess Daquan Finn would apply. I also think we're kind of going to probably end up overrating him just simply because he's the guy they've locked in on, and we're going to treat it like, oh, it's Daquan Finn.
Oh my God. Yeah,
and it's like, okay, is he going to beat out Sawyer Robertson? I mean, probably, but they're not going to land a big fish unless you consider him a big fish with his experience. I mean, maybe you do. I don't know. I'm banking on they're probably going to get him. That's where all signs are pointed. And if they don't, then they're going to be in a little bit of a lurch. But I mean, there's guys out there. It's just not the super big name guys that we're kind of focused and locked in on. I mean, the Grayson McCalls have committed elsewhere. I mean, even your Brock Vandegrift have committed. Everybody else seems to have a couple teams they're down to.
Has McCord yet?
No,
no, because we're just talking about Nebraska.
Yeah,
but I mean, I don't think that Baylor's in the Kyle McCord sweepstakes.
No, I know. I'm just saying that.
It's kind of like with Malik Murphy. Like, I know your thoughts are like, yeah, you at least pursue it, but do I think there's really any legitimate chance of that? Absolutely not. I think that if you're leaving Texas, you're going big game hunting. With all due respect to the Bears, there, unless they've just got some NIL pot waiting for him. That's just outrageous, undeniable, and you can't pass it up.
By the way, somebody asked about why we couldn't get more from Max on Texas Tech. We'll have Chris Level today, just after 5 o'clock, to go deeper into what they've done so far. And the transfer portal is still open, am I correct? Because Malik Murphy did that. Maybe there's a surprise or two name that we don't even know that's on the radar that will be in the next couple of 3 or 4 days. So there we are with that, thanks to Max Olssen. Paxton asking us about our Christmas break. We'll get into that at some point next week. When we come back, Taylor McHargue on the quarterbacks, those who have gone somewhere else, those who are still available. Maybe if he's seen Daquan Finn, I don't know. We'll ask him about that and more. And this is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for great deal and great pricing and great customer service this time of year, any time of year. But with it being Christmas, they are doing everything in their powers to make a car buying experience as easy on you and your family as you could possibly want. You just want to get into a car that you feel good about, especially if you're traveling across the country and you want your family to feel safe and you want to feel safe behind the wheel. So they're a family dealership, and Christmas is a very special time at Richard Carr Motors. Time with family and friends is precious, and they know that getting your family safely to wherever you're going is a priority. So whether you need a new SUV to travel in with your family or service on your existing car or truck, they are here to give you the best deals and the best service during the holidays, which includes the power and strength and stunning interior of GMC Sierra, a truck that has it all, and they have dozens in stock ready to go right now. You can save thousands in holiday savings on cars and trucks, including the GMC Sierra, and qualified buyers can save $8,000 on the Sierra Twin Turbo Elevation model Also, military and first responders can get an additional $500 on top of that. So just check with the good folks over at Richard Carr on more details when it comes to the GMC Sierra and their various holiday savings. But if you're not looking to get into a brand new vehicle, there are also the trades. And Richard Carr does trade for the best, so there is a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks in stock right now. Over 90 used cars and trucks to choose from, all inspected with a 172-point inspection and the Richard Carr seal of approval. The financing goal at Richard Carr, always 100% credit approval. They say yes when others say no. So check out the GMC Sierras or check out their great selection of pre-owned models as well. For 24 years in Central Texas, they built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Richard Carr, run by proud Central Texans, proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial Exit.
TFNB, your bank for life, is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Samantha Duvall, TexasBeefHouse.com in White House, Texas, just outside of Tyler in East Texas. Aged Wagyu beef and so much more you have on your ranch. And what is next?
We are planning another auction January 30th. This auction will be an in-person, online also, a live auction like we did the first time. You come out to the ranch, dinner is going to be provided. It'll be a variety of steaks, hamburger, sausage, tri-tip, brisket, roast, all of the different Wagyu cuts. It's going to be on a Tuesday. It's on January 30th, and it'll kind of be your get ready for Valentine's dinner auction.
We, of course, have a great relationship, partnership with what you do. How has the reaction been as your name and what you guys do at TexasBeefHouse.com grown?
It has grown a lot over this last year. I kind of made a joke at the beginning of 2023 and told my husband, 2023 is going to be our year. I don't know what we're going to do, but something with 2023, it's going to be our year. And we started our auction. So many things have changed for us this year, which has been for the better. So we just want to tell all of our customers, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and thank you so much for your continued support in the year of 2023, and we hope that you return to us in 2024.
And they will. Repeat customers, because the product is amazing. Aged Wagyu beef, TexasBeefHouse.com.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Taylor McHargue, ESPN, former Rice quarterback, with us on 365 Sports. Taylor, we've been discussing the quarterbacks, the transfer portal, some who have made the decision, some who are still around. Is there one or two particular decisions involved that maybe intrigue you the most?
Yeah, I think everything started to me really when Kyle McCord stepped into the portal voluntarily, right? Well, it's all voluntary, but you have to wonder behind the scenes, that's a top 5 quarterback job, right? And it was curious to me, the timing. I mean, it was almost immediately when the portal opened, and it felt like a job that
what's going on behind the scenes? What's the messaging to him where, is he being told, hey, we're going to go test the portal. We may bring somebody else in. And I expected that he would have landed already. I thought, it looked like he was going to settle on Nebraska. That's still open. And then to me, that's also tied to what happens with Cam Ward leaving Washington State, taking visits to Florida State, taking a visit to Miami. But if Cam Ward doesn't go to Ohio State, then what is Ohio State going to do in the portal? Are they going to take anybody at all? Are they going to wait through this round of the portal and wait until the spring? That's kind of at the highest level. What I think is pretty interesting. There's been some others. Grayson McCall is a Group of 5 guy that I thought, I was just interested. He had meant so much to Coastal Carolina. He lands at North Carolina State. I thought that was one that was interesting to me as well. But there are so many guys that are still in the portal right now. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out.
How do you feel about Malik Murphy and what kind of spot he should land in?
Yeah, I think he is a guy that had bright spots at the highest level, and then he also had some really terrible turnovers. And I think, to me, he makes a lot of sense at still obviously at the Power 5 level. I've seen some projections of Group of 5 spots for him. I don't think that makes any sense at all. He is a Power 5, and I think a major Power 5 type of quarterback. I don't think he's going to go to one of the premier schools, right? I don't think he's going to go to a comp of Texas, a la an Ohio State, or we've obviously seen Notre Dame settle on their quarterback with Riley Leonard. But I do think you'll see him land potentially West Coast. We've seen USC. That's been thrown out. I think that could potentially make sense. But the biggest thing to me, it just goes back to is there a staff that feels like, okay, we're going to give this kid a ton of money because that's what he's going to go for quite a bit in the portal. And can you get the best out of him? Because you saw those flashes at Texas. At his best, he is a high level college quarterback with a potential to be an NFL guy. But at the worst that he showed this season, you see some of those turnovers. You wonder, is this even going to be our starter moving forward? And that's the risk, right? And that's the challenge in the NIL game is you're taking a risk on a guy where you have to pay him up front, and you've got boosters that if they invest in a kid and then it doesn't pan out, they're looking at you at the end of the season, what happened with this guy that you asked us to shell out X amount of cash for, and then it's roster management year over year. It's going to start back over at the end of next season.
Taylor, any ideas on what to do with the calendar, especially with an expanded playoff moving forward with just 4 teams? Malik Murphy feels the need to go ahead and jump in the portal and not be a part of that Texas playoff run. But, I mean, with more games on the horizon for some teams next year, what do you do about this if you're college football, the calendar and the logjam that's now been created?
Yeah, the problem is eligibility for the spring semester, right? That is the issue and why they have to have it open right now. I loved the clip from Pat McAfee on College Game Day where he was like, they should just push this back. And everybody on set challenged him immediately. He was like, well, it's not that easy. You can't just push this thing back. You've got kids that they still have to go to school, right? That's still a part of the calculus that you have to factor in right now. They're not just semi-pro football players. And I know at the highest level it feels that way to fans, but these kids still, when they transfer, they have to, when they submit to go into the portal, they are doing that through the athletic, through their counselors and through the athletic office to go in and say, okay, here, I still have X amount of eligibility left. These are my hours of transfer. This is where I can go. It's not as simple as, okay, I'm just going to go into the portal and I can do it whenever I want. They still have to be eligible. I think that's the piece with the NCAA and the clearinghouse. They've got to figure out a way to sort through because, really where I think it damages the sport is in the bowl games. And it's part of why you've seen a lot of these kind of be rendered obsolete where you've got some programs, Ohio State, I think it's up to 26 guys they have in the portal right now. Their bowl game in the Cotton Bowl against Missouri, that's a bowl game that means a lot to Missouri. And on the other side, you've got almost a quarter of the scholarship roster that's not there, or over a quarter of the scholarship roster that's not playing in that game. And so that to me is the worst part right now. You're watering down the bowl games and you're making it to where only the playoff games matter. And even in the playoff games, you've got guys that are still important. Malik Murphy, if something happens to Quinn Ewers, that's a big piece to the Texas equation, and he's not going to be there.
Taylor, DeQuan Finn from Toledo is visiting Baylor. Obviously a dual threat guy, played G5 in the MAC, which has produced some really good quarterbacks. Do you know much about him at all?
Yeah, unbelievable athlete, and a guy that is a Power 5 athlete. He is not going to be a guy that you ask to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game. That's not his game. But he absolutely is a guy that you can move around, try and get him to the outside, have design quarterback sprint out game, play action, and then a lot of design quarterback run game, because he is so versatile when he has the ball in his hands. The only piece that I worry about, a little bit of a slight frame. He's not a heavy guy. And so if you run him consistently in the Big 12, getting the collisions in the MAC is going to be a little bit different from the MAC to the Big 12. All that to say, he absolutely belongs at the Power 5 level. I think Baylor fans, that's a guy that if you get him, you should be excited about, because even if he doesn't pan out as the starter, that is a guy that is athletic enough that you would find a spot for him on the field somewhere.
Okay, if you're Cam Ward and you are the most sought-after quarterback in the portal, and you're going to get your money most of the places you'd want to commit. I mean, there might be some places that back off because they don't have that dollar figure. Are you going to go to a place that is going to make you the best for the NFL more than likely, or is money first?
I don't think money needs to be first because it's going to be comparable to everywhere that he's looking at. It's going to be within a certain range. To me, I would go to a place that already has the roster in a place where you feel confident that you're going to win right now, that you're not going to have to go in and be the savior. And so I'm leading this to the school that I would go to if I'm Cam Ward, is Florida State, where the roster is already in place, where clearly they can compete for what should have been a college football playoff spot, but wasn't. And that they've proven, okay, you can have success at the quarterback spot in their offense. And then from there, he's an NFL talent. He's got an NFL arm. It's just now about honing that in, having one more season of good tape, and then you take it to the next level. Miami has too many holes right now. I think they're a good Power 5 team. They are not a playoff caliber team, but Florida State is. And I think if he drops in, there's still enough talent around him that you take the money that they offer, go try to compete for a national championship, and then you're still in a great spot for the NFL draft.
Taylor, what did you think of Jeff Lebby going to Blake Shapen as the Mississippi State era gets started with Lebby as head coach?
Yeah, it felt like maybe that's not the only quarterback they take, honestly, to me. Blake Shapen, to me, good college player, not an answer to your problems. And Mississippi State has a number of them. There's roster issues all over the place. But that felt to me like it wouldn't shock me if you saw them take one more in the portal in the spring. All that being said, Mississippi State issues go far beyond the quarterback spot for that roster right now.
Taylor, thank you. Great for the knowledge. Appreciate the fact you were able to let us know a lot about the players who have already decided on where they're going, or those still with decisions to make. And a little bit of an interesting note on Finn. He likes him a lot. He was very and I asked him in a text message earlier, had he seen him play? We saw or heard what Taylor McHargue thinks about DeQuan Finn, who's on, again, a visit to Baylor.
Yeah, I think that would be a boon for Baylor to get that done and put somebody who's so athletic into Jake Spavital's offense and open some other things up for you. So, I'm very curious to see where it all ends out. And of course, I support fully his opinion on Cam Ward.
Yeah, I mean, Cam Ward, he goes to Florida State. I think that'd be huge for both sides. I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of smoke there, though, does it? It seems like DJU seems to be their guy.
I mean, they're both there this weekend,
Right.
Which is weird. I will say this about Mike Norvell. If there's a portal guy that leaves and doesn't commit there, that's pretty rare. So if he's been good at closing those deals, the only one I can think, the big one that they didn't get, was Amarius Mims, who wound up going back to Georgia. But since that point, if you especially look at the roster right now, Keon Coleman, Braden Fisk, all those guys came onto campus, after last season and stayed. So that was we'll see. I think DJU is obviously the second choice. I think DJU probably even knows that a little bit, because if he was the first choice, maybe the Cam Ward wouldn't even be there. But and he's going to have choices elsewhere, so it's not. They're all in
DJ.
Yeah, he's going to have choices. He's going to have choices, so it's not going to be the biggest deal. So they're going to win either way on this. It just depends on do you get a guy who. To me, Cam Ward, surefire NFL guy. DJU, maybe NFL guy. He's got some skill set, but it hasn't looked maybe like some of that. So we'll see. But I think we'll find. Cam Ward's only taken one visit to Miami, so so I don't know if he's going to take another one after this. Like Max said before, there's not a big window to keep doing official visits.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it just seems like signs point to Miami. That could be just because he visited there already, and that's why that's the only vibe that people are getting. But clearly, if he's visiting Tallahassee, he's open to options, and you'd be stupid to not have your options open if you're Cam Ward and you stand to make a mint in this portal situation. So, yeah, I'm very excited to see where he goes. Texas guy, and a great story coming up from Incarnate Word, and really being, a picture of the way the transfer portal does benefit guys, and how you can take players who maybe started off at smaller schools for one reason or another, overlooked, what have you, and end up on a stage like Miami or Florida State playing, big time, higher level college football. So I think he's a great example of how the transfer portal can work, and also of how it can be life-changing, probably money for your family, because I think that he's in that mix, in that conversation, clearly, when it comes to guys that stand to make a good bit of money this offseason. So, good for him, and excited to see how those dominoes fall in Tallahassee this weekend.
All right, I'm getting ready to leave because I have to do an MC of a football banquet. Craig will have Off the Radar. Chris Level on Texas Tech just after 5 o'clock. Mickey Spagnola, Cowboys, and their game coming up against Buffalo on the road. And with the way that Josh Allen throws picks, perhaps they'll get 2 or 3 more. And then Paul's Top 5. This is 365 Sports. The city of Woodway. If you have not yet done so, you have a couple of more days. Go to discoverwoodway.com for more information. And you can put a card in the mail, in their mailbox, where they are, the pavilion at the Carleen Bright Arboretum. Put a card in the mailbox, and Santa Claus will return the card for your kid or kids or whoever puts it in there. So that's just another nice little touch of class for your young kid to get a letter, or maybe Paul would want that, a letter in the mail on Christmas Day. They have unbelievable facilities, the amenities of the Carleen Bright Arboretum, the pavilion, the trails, hiking trails, running trails, what they're doing with their all-sport facility. It is a beautiful place to live in the city of Waco or just south of Waco, and 7 hotels. If you are looking for a place to stay on a visit, tourism, or whatever it might be, they have hotels available for you. It's discoverwoodway.com.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. GXG works with partners and donors to offer a suite of options to student athletes, including connections with local businesses and nonprofits, entrepreneurial development, and other avenues to broaden the NIL profile of student athletes. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Donors may wish to support the general fund or direct funds to specific sports. Oversight of the NIL Fund is managed by the Board of Directors of Startup Waco and the Baylor NIL Advisory Council. GXG is a program of Startup Waco, a tax-exempt organization under Internal Revenue Code Section 501c3. Donors should consult their tax advisors regarding the tax deductibility of donations to GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
All right, welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports, which means that it's a Tuesday or a Thursday. It's a Thursday, obviously, in this case, around 4:45. Take a look at a grab bag of stories that are going on around not just college football, but around the sports world. And I won't reinforce really all that's happened today because we've covered it pretty extensively of the decisions and whatnot being made around college football and the transfer portal. But did want to make a mention again earlier. I don't think this came as a huge surprise, Paul, but Jalen Milroe did announce he'll be back for another year. I don't think that I don't know that I was even debating whether or not he would be back for another year. No, but hey, after the run that you've had, I suppose it's good to go ahead and make it public there. So he will be coming back for his senior year. But what a story he has turned into from that Texas loss and kind of what was being said to SEC champs, beating Georgia, the unbeatable, right? And now, I mean, for all we know, could win a national championship here in the next few weeks. But he will be coming back. He made that official on the Next Round show, and his father also talked to ESPN and said that he's just focused on finishing out this year, but he wants to return to Alabama for his senior season. He'll graduate on Saturday with a degree in business administration and a minor in entrepreneurship. So young man from Texas doing some good things and made that official today.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Like if he were going to jump into the transfer portal, that would be the most shocking thing in the world. Like even Alabama can't keep their guy who helped them win all these games. I'll tell you this, Craig, this is the comparison I'll make to Jalen Milroe, and he might be just on the fact that they can there's not just one bowl game he's going to play in now because he's in the college football playoff, but it reminds me a lot of Vince Young the first Rose Bowl year where, you watch Vince Young play that year before, you're like, man, this guy's an athlete, but he just doesn't know what he's doing, right? He just looked all over the place.
Before they played Michigan in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, before they Michigan. Before they played Michigan. So, but in the middle of that year, Mac Brown decided, hey, why are we trying to, overcoach this guy? Let's just go out and, call plays that he can do and then live with that and then let him be a superior athlete. And where Vince Young was the most dangerous, especially early on in that career, was when he was making it up. Right, and he was always dangerous that way. But when it broke down and he had to make it up, that's where Jalen Milroe is right now, where, he's dangerous doing a lot of things that they call, but when you think you've got him dead to rights, and I'll just point to that Auburn game of the 3 worst plays you can run before a fourth down at the end of a game happened, including one of the dumbest things a quarterback can ever do in throwing the ball. He was 3 yards past the line. And you've got a 4th and 31, and then he just made that happen. That's the kind of groove he's in where even when it's going bad, it can still be great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a guy with more improvement in store, I think. Another year, it'll be fun to see where, he ends up falling, but has a chance to really make some incredible history. I mean, to think about going from that Texas game to possibly winning a national title, which is, on the cards or, still in the cards for him is going to be pretty, it's going to be pretty cool. But it's already been pretty cool to see what he's been able to do thus far. Meanwhile, there's, still swirlings about what could happen, in realignment moving forward with the ACC. They're kind of the ones that seem to be on the clock right now in terms of Florida State's unhappiness after the college football playoff snub. And, man, we can go undefeated in this league, but we can't make it. I still don't know how that's the SEC's fault. That's more the committee bending that than it's the ACC's a culprit for the committee's decision. But when you're mad at the conference, it's kind of like when Texas and Oklahoma started blaming the Big 12 for every shortfall that they had. Yeah. That's kind of what is now happening with Florida State and perhaps others of like anything that goes wrong, it's the ACC's fault. But that's kind of what seems to be up next. There's also, however, still the threads of the Pac-2 and the Pac-12 and what all that's going to look like. And we've, gone into a little bit of detail as far as the continuing court battle with Washington State, Oregon State, and the 10 former schools that are all going to be scattered over the Big 10 and Big 12 moving forward. But there was questions about, well, what are they going to do next season? What are Washington State and Oregon State going to do? There's questions about, who are they going to play? And then we saw where, Washington State did announce that they were going to end up playing and they were going to continue on with the Apple Cup. And so that was all great. But what about the rest of those games? And this Mountain West merger, is that going to happen? Well, we now know the full-blown schedules for 2024 for Oregon State and Washington State. That came out today, and they will, in fact, both be playing their rivals, as you're going to get Oregon and Oregon State, and you're going to also, as we already knew, get Washington and Washington State. But one key part of this schedule for Washington State is that Texas Tech was involved, as they agreed to schedule a home-and-home series with Washington State, and in doing so have rescheduled their expected trip to Autzen Stadium to play Oregon next September. That was a game that was going to happen on September the 7th. It was going to be the second game of their home and home. And we saw how that played out in Lubbock with Oregon winning a really tight game. But because of all the shuffling around, that game will now take place in 2033. So Texas Tech, supposed to go to Eugene next season, will now not go to Eugene until 2033. So what does the college football landscape, you think, look like here? I've seen a lot of unhappy Red Raider fans that feel like they got kind of the short end of the stick in all of this, and being cooperative, because now, I mean, what does college football in 2033 even look like? And there's also a lot of people that I would imagine that already bought plane tickets hoping to go to Eugene, Oregon next summer, and now you got 10 years until they're actually going to play that game.
Maybe you just change it to Pullman, Washington.
Change it to Pullman, Washington, because they will now go to Washington State on September the 7th instead, and they will also host the Cougars
in the Mike Leach Classic.
In the Mike Leach Classic. They will host the Cougars in 2032. So they were scheduled to go to Oregon. Because of all the shuffling the schedules and trying to get all that right, they agreed to help move things around. So they've bumped back that Oregon trip to 2033, and they will now go to Pullman, Washington to help out the Cougars and fill out that schedule. And so what does that look like? Well, for Washington State, they will open up with Portland State, and then we'll have Texas Tech. They will then have the Apple Cup with Washington in week 3. And then there's where the Mountain West comes in. They will play San Jose State. They will travel to Oregon State. Then they will play host to Utah State, Wyoming, and Hawaii, and have road games against San Diego State, Boise State, New Mexico, and Fresno State. And I saw somebody make this comment, and I made this comment a few weeks ago of like, what's the record for how many schools with state in their name has ever occurred on a schedule? And I'm pretty sure we're going to see that with Washington State, Oregon State, as a result of these 2024 schedules. But now we know the Mountain West Conference opponents, and thank you, Jack, for getting that up there. Now you will see that Oregon State and Washington State are not included on that top row because they're not officially Mountain West Conference teams. But you will see the Beaver logo and the Cougar logo dotted throughout, and you can spot it there. Now the dates are not official, but we now know for 100% certainty, and we kind of already knew it anyways, that they were going to be playing a Mountain West schedule next season. So any thoughts of like they're jumping into with the Big 12? I mean, they've moved on along, and based on what we talked about yesterday and the information Smokey has, I think the Big 12 at this point is kind of just sitting back and not so much looking west as they are very much looking east like everybody else is right now, and just kind of waiting to see what might happen out there and what an upcoming Florida State challenge, which he also talked about. That's very much seems to be coming down the pipeline, what that challenge of the grant of rights here in the next perhaps few weeks could look like. And I think everybody in college football is got some interest level in this, but there you go. Washington State, I just told you, their schedule for next season. I'll get to Oregon State in a second. But what are your thoughts on getting this solidified here?
I think it's great. I think it's great for the Mountain West. I think I'm relieved for Washington State and Oregon State as they now continue to navigate the legal minefields of which is going to get worse because they're withholding money. So that's now probably gone from contentious.
Yeah.
Also, on the heels of this, the Mountain West is working with them to join the basketball conference for that year.
I was going to bring that up. That also came out today. Apparently, there's now the talks, and you were wondering, okay, well, if they're going to do this Mountain West agreement in football, what about all of the other sports that are going on? What is that going to possibly look like? And there was a report, and I want to make sure that I get the right person for that.
I think it's John Rothstein.
Yeah, I think probably among others at this point, saying that they are working on a basketball schedule for 24-25. So that is now underway. And let's see here. Yeah, it was John Rothstein. I want to make sure we got that from CBS Sports in discussions to join the league for the 24-25 college basketball season. But it is interesting that it's all just for next year, right? Like they're kind of just taking this piece by piece. And again, I think that probably has a lot to do with just nobody really knowing what to expect beyond next season. I mean, how the heck could you be in the prediction game much without just saying something obvious like, well, the SEC will be strong in the next few years, or the Big Ten will be strong. We kind of know all of that, but beyond that, if you're not amongst those schools, and even they have some questions, it's hard to know what to plan for beyond 2024.
I would say that they're also looking east, right? So they're also thinking about where they can be, when that shakes. Because look, the ACC's already gone and added, 2 schools out there.
Mm-hmm.
And if it gets to the point of where there's another seismic shakeup, especially for that conference, Oregon State and Washington feel the best about their credentials and maybe being able to join and help on a West Coast swing sort of thing. Because right now, the plan for the ACC is to play a lot of stuff in Dallas, which will be great for hotels in Dallas, I guess. But and great for SMU, but it's still going to be kind of strange going forward. But yeah, I think. Ultimately, I think the best thing for Oregon State and Washington State is to be in the Mountain West. But, if they could be back in a power conference, if the ACC would even be considered that,
right?
How do you even navigate all that?
We don't even know what does it look like beyond a year.
The next tier of so the new subdivision that can happen, what does that even look like? Yeah,
is that even going to happen? We don't know that for sure because it's just a proposal by the NCAA and Charlie Baker just to try and cut some of this off at the pass, and a lot of people calling it out for being just that. And so, there's just too much uncertainty to know really beyond what's right in front of you. And so at least for right now, Oregon State, Washington State, they know what's coming up in football next year, and now working on a basketball schedule with the Mountain West Conference as well. Now, as far as baseball and every other sport, I have no idea what's in store for them. But Texas Tech playing a role in agreeing to move the Oregon series back and adding Washington State. So heading to Pullman next summer will be Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders. And I mentioned Washington State, but meanwhile for Oregon State, they will play previously scheduled games: Idaho State, San Diego State. Oregon is back on now. They also play Purdue and Cal along with Washington State. And then they learned today that Colorado State, San Jose State, and UNLV will all play games in Corvallis, while Air Force, Boise State, and Nevada will be their road games from the Mountain West Conference. So there you go. Oregon State and Washington State now know everything but the dates for next year's 2024 football schedule. Meanwhile, Major League Baseball. We didn't talk about this the other day. I had it on my list, and there was just too many things going on. but I should have said it on Tuesday because now it feels a little bit dated, but who cares? Shohei Ohtani to the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's very interesting. As soon as I came down, there was all these articles that I was reading, or a couple of articles I was reading about, like, well, it's not as much money as you think it is, or it's not as much as he could have gotten elsewhere. Or this, he's going to make gobs and gobs and gobs of money, and he's going to be playing not too far from where he started his Major League Baseball career, going Anaheim to Los Angeles. Couldn't do much shorter of a trip as far as moving around goes. So what are your thoughts on Ohtani and the LA Dodgers?
The deferral thing is the most mind-boggling
Very
deal.
confusing, all the contract particulars, yes.
Well, I mean, just my question is, and look, the Dodgers obviously feel great about their financial future in that for a decade after he plays for you, because I don't think in 2034 Ohtani's going to be playing anymore.
I don't think so, yeah.
I mean, if he does, he's going to be on a series of one-year deals.
Right.
And
he's not pitching at that point.
He's not pitching at that point. Like he would be on a farewell tour. So in 2034, you're going to lay out $68 million a year, which you might be doing for other players at that point anyway. But $68 million a year for a guy who's gone, that's going to be wild. But look, this is a lineup in the top three. Like the top three of the lineup is the best you can possibly imagine in Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and now Shohei Ohtani. So those are three guys who could be MVPs at any given year. Three guys who could. Mookie would have probably been the MVP this year if not for Ohtani, right? Or he could have been, like in Seager, I guess, Corey Seager. But
I say, but put some respect on his name.
Corey Seager. So you've got, guys who are MVPs right up there. And then, he's now, because he's only making $2 million a year, you're going to be able to go out and get somebody else that's going to make, big money, maybe a couple of guys. They've got $68 million to play with now, because they've got Ohtani on their roster for $2 million a year.
Yeah.
And he's going to make, here's the other thing. People go like, if you think about it, he's going to make $20 million a year from New Balance. He's going to make $20 million a year doing, like, who knows how much money he makes in Japan anyway, endorsing things.
Sure.
Like, who knows how much he makes in Japan and will now make even more so in Japan because the story's gotten that much bigger. So, yeah, he's, whew.
There's a lot of particular. I mean, like the way the money's offset and the way it's moved around it's got a lot of people scratching their heads of like, how is this allowed? How does this fall under
the CBA?
It's under the CBA. So I mean, it was doable, but $700 million, a 10-year, $700 million contract. What he agreed to. There's also a clause in there that if two of the executives, Mark Walter and Andrew Friedman, are no longer with the team. And it's actually okay timing because he was being introduced today. But apparently there's a clause in there that he could terminate his deal if those guys are not with the organization at some point, which is a very interesting clause. So clearly they played a big role in his decision-making that you would put that in there. But yeah, 97% of the money deferred without interest and not paid fully until 2043. That just doesn't seem like it should be allowed because you could shift it and play around with the money for the years right now that actually matter. But yes, 10 years, $700 million. Ohtani is a Dodger. And I wanted to roll back around to that because I meant to bring that up just the other day. Just a couple more notes here. Meanwhile, the NFL has announced that they will be going back to Los Angeles for the Super Bowl in February of 2027. They will be returning to SoFi Stadium for Super Bowl 61 out there in Inglewood, California. So the Chargers and Rams as dual hosts. That sets up the next 4 years of Super Bowls. We already knew Las Vegas this upcoming February. Next year, they'll be back in New Orleans for Super Bowl 59 and then Super Bowl 60, which, man, that makes me feel really old. Starting to get into crazy Roman numeral territory here and having to learn some new Roman numerals. But Santa Clara, Super Bowl 60, and now Inglewood, California, Los Angeles, SoFi Stadium for Super Bowl 61. That was the one announced today. So that is your 4 future Super Bowl sites.
I can't wait till it comes back to Dallas in 2050.
Dude, they hosted with this great stadium and never hosted again. They had Snowpocalypse.
Yeah.
And then it just
the seat-pocalypse.
The seat-pocalypse, I guess.
Not good.
Yeah. Seatgate.
Yeah.
Wintergate. Whatever. That's bizarre, dude. I mean, really, like the fact that it's been so long now that you probably don't even really think about it too much, but they had one Super Bowl at Jerry's. They've had everything there. Everything. 10 times over. Every concert imaginable. Award shows. Championship games, college football, and they've had that one Super Bowl. Yeah, basketball, March Madness. They've had that one Super Bowl. They had terrible weather. They had the seating fiasco, and they are not. I mean, are they ever going to get it back again? Not for the next 4 years.
Yeah, and part of it was also like it wasn't. We were trapped. So we didn't get to go anywhere, but Dallas has to do a better job. The city has to do a better job of the North Texas Super Bowl. Man, that's a big area.
Too spread out.
It's too spread out. Where like this is in Fort Worth. This is like when if you've not been here and you hear Dallas Fort Worth, well, Fort Worth is 30 minutes away if you're in an easy part to get to it from Dallas.
And there's multiple cities with hundreds of thousands of their own residents all sandwiched in between all over.
Yeah, so it's not like, it's Dallas, Fort Worth. You've got to go through 7 other places to get there.
Right.
Like, yeah, it's not this,
I wasn't even thinking about that, but you're absolutely, that's crazy that they still have not, and there's not even on the docket to get another Super Bowl since that first one. That's absolutely crazy. But all right, I'll wrap it up with this. So I told you, Los Angeles, now the host for the Super Bowl in February of 2027. But meanwhile, tonight, you will have some NFL action. Chargers at the Raiders. The Raiders will be without Josh Jacobs, and fresh off that 3-0 loss to the Minnesota Vikings, which was a bizarre finish for any type of a football game, much less an NFL game, to finish 3-0. But the Raiders and Chargers in a battle of, I guess, L.A. versus Las Vegas. Have to remember where they all are now.
Yeah.
That'll be coming up later tonight on that Amazon Prime game, and I don't know. That'll be okay, I suppose.
Well, when you've got Aiden O'Connell versus Easton Stick, it's not
right.
It's not.
They've had a big issue in the league with quarterback injuries. You know, you wonder why they're so overprotective as it is, and then you look at a year like this year, where even with all the rules they put in place, half the league's playing with backup quarterbacks at this point. At least it seems that way. But yeah, not the sexiest matchup in the world. But Chargers Raiders, a AFC West contest that's coming up on Amazon later tonight, and there's a few things off the radar.
Yeah, Chris Level comes up next. By the way, real quick, Pete Thamel reports that so far Georgia, South Carolina, USC, Syracuse, Baylor, Oregon State, and Duke have expressed interest in Malik Murphy. So
yeah, I expect so.
Two places that he would go and 5 that he would not. But
probably.
I mean, we don't know.
Yeah.
But let's be real about where Malik Murphy's going to probably wind up.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. You never know. It's a different world now. When we come back, Chris Level, RedRaidersports.com, joins us.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected. Get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Ring in the new year with unbeatable savings on the new 2023 Ram trucks during the wrap-up-the-year sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco. Take advantage of this limited-time opportunity and start the new year in style. Shop our great selection in-store or online today.
Samantha Duvall, TexasBeefHouse.com in White House, Texas, just outside of Tyler in East Texas. Aged Wagyu beef and so much more you have on your ranch. And what is next?
We are planning another auction January 30th. This auction will be an in-person, online also, a live auction like we did the first time. You come out to the ranch, dinner is going to be provided. It'll be a variety of steaks, hamburger, sausage, tri-tip, brisket, roast, all of the different Wagyu cuts. It's going to be on a Tuesday. It's on January 30th, and it'll kind of be your get ready for Valentine's dinner auction.
We, of course, have a great relationship, partnership with what you do. How has the reaction been as your name and what you guys do at TexasBeefHouse.com grown?
It has grown a lot over this last year. I kind of made a joke at the beginning of 2023 and told my husband, 2023 is going to be our year. I don't know what we're going to do, but something with 2023, it's going to be our year. And we started our auction. So many things have changed for us this year, which has been for the better. So we just want to tell all of our customers, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and thank you so much for your continued support in the year of 2023. And we hope that you return to us in 2024.
And they will. Repeat customers, because the product is amazing. Aged Wagyu beef, TexasBeefHouse.com.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Edward Jones Investments and financial advisor Chuck Verno, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Chris Level, RedRaidersports.com joins us now. And Chris, the Red Raiders getting ready for the Independence Bowl in Shreveport on Saturday, and obviously, bowl games back-to-back years is great. It's huge, but this was a year that was disappointing in the thought that they were going to contend for the Big 12 title. But given the fact that Joe McGuire never lets anything get him down, what is the vibe around the program, around the Independence Bowl as they get ready for that game?
Yeah, this has been a program that over the last, decade-ish had really struggled and just not been very good for various parts. And so I think 3 bowl games in a row. I mean, Joey was obviously, he had taken over before the Liberty Bowl a couple of years ago, didn't coach that game, but he had the job in Sonny Cummey coached that one. So I think that, it wasn't the year that they wanted. I think, they weren't picked to win the Big 12. They weren't even ranked in the preseason top 25. And they were a lot of people's dark horse and all those things. But, quarterback injuries and just inconsistency and turnovers and all those things, it didn't end up being the year that they wanted. But, you're right. What Joey's going to point to is hey, we had back-to-back winning conference records for the first time since 2008 or 9, and he's responsible for both of those. And they were fortunate to make it to a bowl game because they had you're at 1-3 and 3-5 at one point in the year, and you won enough to extend your season. So but you don't want to be playing in football games and before Christmas. That's not what anybody what their goals are for. But yeah, you want to make the most of it. And one of these teams on Saturday night is going to be 6-7, and the other was going to be 7-6, and that's not you don't want to end the year with a losing record, obviously. So we'll see what we get. I'm fascinated by this game for a variety of reasons, though. It's 2 really, really good running backs, and obviously Taj Brooks, who's decided he's going to come back next year, and then for Cal, Jaden Ott. I mean, he's about a 1,300-yard rusher, and Tech, I think, is going to end up seeing probably the 2 top running backs in the Pac-12 conference this year individually. They saw Bucky Irving in Oregon earlier this year, and he's already declared for the draft, and then Jaden Ott. And then the other thing I'm fascinated by is the in-helmet communication that they're going to use in these bowl games. So the coordinators can talk to their quarterback or their linebackers and safeties if you're on the defensive side, and I think that's kind of fascinating. It's something that we have never seen before. So interested to see kind of how that goes.
Chris, was the Taj Brooks decision surprising? Did people expect him to go off to the NFL, especially given the life of a running back these days, or was there a hunch that he could be back for another run?
Yeah, pun intended, right? For another run or maybe many.
Right,
A month ago, I would have I thought he's just gone. He's going to go to the try to take his chance at the NFL. What I'm gathering is I think it changed about 2 or 3 weeks ago as the regular season wound down, and I think he got some feedback from the NFL. Look, Taj, for all that he is, what he's not is he doesn't have elite speed. He just doesn't, and I think if he did have it, he's out of there. But I think what he wants to try to do is try to be the all-time leading rusher, and obviously with NIL being what it is, you have the ability to earn some money while you're still in college, and he didn't want to gamble. He didn't want to chance it because I think that the feedback was, mid to late round or undrafted free agent, and that's well, surely he's going to get drafted. Well, you just don't know that, and so. What he is good at, though, is that he's good at breaking tackles. He's good at getting north-south. He doesn't take negative plays. He's elite at picking up the blitz. There's a place for him in the NFL, but I think he wanted to, go with the guarantee of, okay, I'm going to be the starter here. I have the opportunity to better my situation. I could maybe, try to get a little faster and work on that specifically in the next year. And all those things. And so I guess it all equals a good situation for Texas Tech because he's not only a great player, he's just a guy that you want your younger players looking at going, this is how you're supposed to operate, on a daily basis, away from the field, in class, in the locker room, all that kind of stuff. And so I think it's a culture, win as much as it is the player that he is. And he's going to have to, I think, 1,200 yards or so next year. He'll be the all-time leading rusher here, which is quite a statement when you look at all the Doak Walker Award winners they had here with Bam Morris and Byron Hanspard and Ricky Williams and all those guys that they had when Spike Dykes was coaching here.
Chris, they have been kind of dominating the portal cycle as far as volume. And, all over the map, too. You're talking about Toledo, Memphis, Arizona State, Florida, Fairmont State, Guelph, which is in Canada. I don't even know if I even said it right. But they are – Joe McGuire and his team are loading up on guys, some of them bringing home, like Jalen Conyers, really intriguing. Who is the most intriguing transfer, or what is the most intriguing part of the focus of the portal been for you this first, week and a half?
Yeah, this stuff is just I don't know whether it's fascinating or whether it's maddening or whether it's both. I don't know. It's wild to me. It is, and those of us that are in it and you're trying to learn your team and then you learn it and then it just absolutely totally changes. And you're trying to learn all these new guys and they're not here very long and it's just wild to me. But yeah, they had some guys hop in the portal, and so Joey's always, since he's gotten here, he's like, I'm going to build this thing through the high school ranks. However, we're going to use this portal, and we're going to use it, and so kind of one out, one in kind of deal from a portal standpoint. So you have a bunch of guys that weren't really playing and want to play more, and so here it's like, okay, well, let's game on, let's try to fill these roster spots up. And I think for me, the offensive line is obviously is the primary focus. That's where Texas Tech has got to get better. You build it through the high school ranks. Well, you don't want to turn the offensive line over to a bunch of freshmen and redshirt freshmen. You're trying to stopgap it, and you're trying to bridge the gap, however you want to phrase that, and trying to grow those kids up. But in the meanwhile, you need immediate help. And I think what I've learned and what I'm seeing, and I think we've seen what Matt Rule said about what quarterbacks are worth out there on the open market. And, there's a lot of rumors about what Deion's doing with offensive linemen and all that. But I think linemen are hardest to get in the portal just because there's only so many good ones out there. There's only so many big people out there in the world that are good at specific skills, like blocking and all that kind of stuff. So, it's been hard for them to fill that void a bit, but they did get a couple of additions in the last 2 days that are both probably their starting guards next year, one from Toledo and one from Memphis, and Vinny Scurry and then obviously Davion Carter. And so that was the focus. And that, they wanted Jalen Conyers here when Matt Wells was the coach here. They tried to get him. They were the first to offer him. He's from right up the road in Groover. Texas and ended up going to Oklahoma. And then he ended up going to Arizona State. He's back home. But yeah, he was a big time addition. They're going to lose one of their tight ends in Baylor Cup, and he'll replace Baylor Cup. But yeah, he was highly sought after and all that. But yeah, it's been wild to try to follow this stuff, man. It really is, because it's like you don't know who's on your roster. There's a few kids that are in the portal for Texas Tech that are going to still play in the bowl game. That's kind of an interesting dynamic as well. But the opt-outs that you're seeing, I mean, it's just this sport in December is just insanity right now. I don't know what they do to fix it, but it's all over the place.
Yeah, I think we all feel the same way. Like, we don't know how to feel, if it's good or it's bad, but we also don't know how to fix it, and good luck to whoever has to make those types of decisions, because where do you start? Yeah. With Micah Hudson going ahead and I guess putting pen to paper. I know it'll be officially announced, next week along with regular signing day. I don't know how much, nervousness there actually was, but just how monumental of a signing is that for Joey and just this program to land a big fish at wide receiver and a top guy like Micah Hudson?
Well, it's, they're on offense. They've been way too slow here. They lack juice. They lack playmaking. And so not only is it's a, the perception of recruiting here changes when you get a guy like that. So that's one thing. And then two, like the void that he fills or he adds something that you just don't have. That is also, because, I mean, you guys are aware, he's a freak. I mean, he does things that you can't really coach and teach and all those things. He just kind of has it. And you hope that it translates to the next level. And there's no guarantee that it will, but I think that, he'll be a player that really has an opportunity from day one here. They'll move him all over the place, play him in the slot, play him on the outside, hand it to him on jet sweeps. I mean, he's just a guy that you want to get the ball in his hands and see what he can do. But there's just not many times when the Red Raiders have been able to go head to head against, like, whether it's Texas or A&M for an in-state kid and legitimately just beat them, and he kind of he talked to Texas and talked to A&M. There were some visits and things like that, but in the end, he's really been solidified with Texas Tech for, I would say, 4 to 6 months. And there's and obviously everybody gets nervous when you're dealing with a top player like that. And then the next cycle is now going to begin. It's like, okay, now you get him here. Can you keep him here?
Yeah.
So it never stops. Can you keep him here? Can you keep him happy? But yeah, you love the addition from what he adds from a perception standpoint, being able to recruit here, and then obviously what he can do as a player for sure.
All right, don't get to ask a lot of off-the-field questions necessarily, because we're not always privy to that, especially schools that are farther away, but I couldn't help but notice Tony Bradford Jr. is one of the 3 finalists for the Jason Whitten Collegiate Man of the Year Award, which has to do with some on the field, but also very much off the field. I've read previously where he's big in community service, but can you just kind of, I guess, paint a bigger picture of Tony Bradford Jr. and his contributions there in Lubbock and at Texas Tech, and why he's a guy that's up for an award like this?
Yeah, and I appreciate you asking about that. Tony's a guy, this is the way the student-athlete experience is supposed to work. I mean, he has squeezed everything out of Texas Tech he possibly could have with his time here and Lubbock and everything. And I think Texas Tech has done everything they can do to squeeze everything out of Tony Bradford. It's been a beautiful existence since he showed up here. But you're talking about a kid, Joey calls him the mayor just because everybody knows him. He loves to get out and about, and he's a good player. He leads the team in sacks. He's just been a solid player in his time here. I don't know if he's necessarily an NFL caliber guy. He may give that a crack, but he could also be the next police chief, or he could be the next, whatever. And this is what he has his eyes on in the future. And, whenever Tony doesn't live in Lubbock anymore, Lubbock won't be as good of a place without Tony Bradford in it. That's the best thing I can say about him. But I mean, Thanksgiving, he's giving away, he's spending his own NIL money to give away turkeys to needy families. I mean, that pretty much sums up who Tony Bradford is. I mean, I'm doing an interview with him. He's telling me about it, and he's like, I saved up enough of my money to be able to do this. It's been a dream, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm almost like choking up. Like, dude, you're what it's all about, man. I mean, and I wish there was more people like it, not only at Texas Tech, but everywhere, because the world would be a lot better with more Tony Bradford in it, for sure.
Chris, thanks so much for joining us. Are you in Shreveport? Are you going to Shreveport?
Well, it's this interesting dynamic. I'm actually going to be in Fort Worth because Tech basketball and Grant McCaslin are playing Vanderbilt at 6:30 in Fort Worth on Saturday night, and the football team's kicking off at 8:15 in Shreveport. And so I'm like, call my Learfield guy. I'm like, okay, where are you sending me? And they're sending me to hoops. So I was going to let somebody down, and I feel like I need to be in both places, but that's not the way it works.
All right, Chris Level, RedRaidersports.com. Chris, thanks a lot.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You guys have a good rest of the week.
All right, there we go.
Yeah, good stuff there with Chris. A lot of ground to cover. A lot of, I think, important things, from the transfer portal. They've clearly been locked in on wide receiver and offensive line, and that makes a lot of sense. So you've seen them address that already early on. Couple of receivers this week. I know Caleb Douglas was official, but I can't remember if the other one was official yet or not. But an offensive lineman today, obviously. So that's an area of need. They gotta get better up front and got to get better weapons around what will likely be Baron Morton next year, and then Will Hammond and everybody else that eventually you have competing there. But to get Micah Hudson officially locked in is absolutely massive. But as he pointed out, now it's hard to know what's right and wrong, and as far as in and out in the transfer portal, and then you get Micah Hudson, but you're already worried about, all right, how are we starting to collect money for next year for the Micah Hudson fund and whoever else, and those are just some of the weird dynamics that he was able to touch on in this interview. Of on the one hand, you're excited and you are excited, but there's also like the caveat of but this, and so it's just a weird landscape to try to maneuver through. But I think you're happy about the additions that you've got. You're happy for sure. You're over the moon about Micah Hudson making it official despite all of the attention from elsewhere and all of the offers from elsewhere. And you've got some things shaping up for the 2024 season. Dang it. I just realized I forgot to ask him. Dang it. I wanted to ask him about moving that Oregon game. And I wish I would have asked about that, but I don't know. We covered a lot of ground there still with him, but I know that there's not a lot of and maybe it's just a vocal minority on Twitter, but there's some folks not happy about that move, probably because they were planning on going to Eugene, but maybe next time we have him on, we can talk about that. And certainly before next season, we'll talk to Chris plenty of times before then. Also need to get into Grant McCaslin a little bit more.
Yeah.
They've started, 7-2, I think is what they are at this point. But I know you like Grant a lot, know him pretty
Grant.
well. And so we're all happy for him to have that opportunity. And when I guess we're a little further down the road, we can get deeper into Grant McCaslin and his time in Lubbock so far. But,
Scott Drew's never once had an assistant. They're like, oh, glad that guy's gone.
Right.
Never once. It's always like, oh, dang. Well, of course he deserves it. Every single one of them. Of course, they're all, to work with Scott, honestly, to work with him, you have to be like him. You have to have you have to be a warm, jovial person. Right. Otherwise, because if you're a jerk, it's going to drive you nuts. Just like if you were Scott Drew, an assistant coach working for a jerk, it would drive you nuts.
Yeah.
You can't. Yeah. But Grant's great. He's going to do great there. At least already started out well. So there in Lubbock. So
just excited to see what he ends up doing. And I did want to pass along though, real quick. I just the part that I regretted about not asking about that Oregon thing. But again, we could talk about that later. A couple portal notes though. Malik Murphy now officially in the portal. That's not a surprise, obviously, but also now officially in the portal. One Caleb Douglas from. Caden Green, from Caleb Douglas, the receiver that Tech just got. Caden Green, Oklahoma starting offensive lineman, officially in the portal. I was wondering if a couple days would go by, if maybe they got some talkings to and able to get him back in the fold, but no, he's officially in the portal, so let all the rampant rumors continue on. And according to Max Olssen, our buddy who just joined us, Missouri and Oregon, apparently a couple of schools to be on the lookout for when it comes to Caden Green. So there you go. Missouri. Very much in the conversations these days.
Is he from Missouri?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so I think he's from St. Louis. I think I read that somewhere.
Oregon, very involved in a lot of things. Their hands in a lot of pots. But Missouri now suddenly as well with their recent run of success this past year. They're definitely trying to take full advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com. The Cowboys have the Bills on the road this week. This is 365 Sports.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Oh, Richard Carr, Buick GMC, how lovely are your SUVs. Oh, Richard Carr, Buick GMC, I love the trucks you have for me. Strong and tough with luxury, room for all my family. Oh, Richard Carr, Buick GMC, you are the dealership for me.
Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, is your holiday item superstore. Half spiral hams, 8 to 10 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Pit hams, 12 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Bone-in hams, 18 to 22 pounds for $3.40 per pound. Whole raw turkeys from 12 to 16 pounds for $2.50 a pound. Whole smoked turkeys, that's smoked turkeys at 9 to 12 pounds for $3.75 a pound. And mini pit hams, 6 to 8 pounds for $5.99 a pound. And don't forget, they have full service butcher shop where you can find what you want: pork, poultry, seafood, and beef. And I bring up the beef because big beef tenderloin or a prime rib. Brian Bauer and the Bauer family, full service bakery with fresh baked kolaches every morning and bread and cold beer and wine. Tailgate needs from pellet fuel to charcoal. Waco Custom Marketplace and the holiday items, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
This is 365 Sports. It's time for our weekly segment with Mickey Spagnola of DallasCowboys.com.
Prescott fires, caught, Lamb, touchdown.
Brought to you by the First National Bank of Central Texas, with 5 locations to serve you.
Welcome back to 365 Sports. Waiting Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com.
Yeah, we'll just have to take him on the fly when he calls. So
okay, so he's calling back.
Yeah, so we'll tap dance here for a second. We have a couple of super chats that we did not get to from Bracket Cat earlier in the show. Craig, how do you keep it from being an invitational when it comes to the playoff? Step 1, ACC and Big 12 champs must consistently play and beat SEC and Big 10 at-large teams have to change the perception first.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything can be solved by winning, or most things can be solved by winning when it comes to perception in particular. I mean, how do you defeat the argument when you're being drowned out by the fact that there's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of fans on the other side of any argument about tradition and things like that, or just the current how you stack up. I mean, there's certain teams that feel they're above others. How do you change that perception? You go and beat those teams. You go beat those teams. You beat them on a regular basis. You prove that you belong, and then there's no argument against it. But until you win those types of games, then there's going to be that perception that's out there. That was part of kind of the frustration, I think, with such a small playoff, is you don't give those teams the opportunity very often to play those teams, right? How big of a deal was that for TCU to beat Michigan. And how many years would people say, well, TCU can't beat Michigan? Well, they're not even going to, like, why not? Might as well not even play. It's kind of like, well, Florida State can't beat so-and-so. Might as well not even play. But I saw somebody bring up a great point. Herb Street had like his verbal diarrhea that he needed to let loose because he's been getting beat up from all sides on his playoff opinions. And somebody pointed out, well, people thought that LSU was better than Florida State, and then they played. And then people thought that Oregon was better than Washington, and then they played. And then people thought Oregon was still better than Washington, and they played again, and Washington beat them again. And he had a couple of other examples, but it's like, yeah, you got to play the games. And so I think that you're right, that the only way to change perceptions of who's the biggest and the baddest is to go and win those types of games. And so that was, a big deal for TCU, even though people want to ignore it because of what happened against Georgia. But that's the types of games that you have to win. And that's a long process. Like the SEC, I know they've always had the tradition and everything like that, but my perception of them, because I grew up watching Nebraska win titles.
Yeah.
I know Alabama won one early in the 90s, but they were not Alabama for like majority of my life until the start of the 2000s, really. And LSU was not a massive deal in the big picture of things. But then you get to that run that started in about, I guess it was 2003 with LSU beating Oklahoma in the big upset. And then all that followed that with Florida and LSU and Alabama, obviously, and Auburn in there. And then Georgia comes along, and it's hard to defeat that argument because it's not just, hey, we're bigger and we have more money and we have bigger TV. It's like, no, we have the titles to prove it. We have the national championships. And so, yeah, you have to win those games. And a Big 12 or an ACC or whoever, Conference C that wants to be a bit more respected, the only way to do that is not to get more money or a better TV. It's to go beat those other teams, and then you've got the proof there in the pudding. As far as how you change the invitational part of it, I don't think that you can really. If you look at the definition of the college football playoff on Wikipedia, it states it's an invitational. I mean, it's what it is. And so, barring doing something where you have just automatic bids, which is what they do not want to do, that's the only way you could do it. And even then there would be an argument of like, okay, well, which conferences get those? And then how do you determine? The only way to do it where it wouldn't be an invitational, I suppose, would be like, here's our Power Four, they're automatic. And then whoever finishes second in each of those leagues, I guess they'd be automatic. And then the highest ranked group of five. So they've kind of done it as best they can to be automatic, but it's still more of an invitational than it is an automatic, but it's not as clean cut as NFC East, West, South, winners move on. It's a bit more subjective.
There's no competitive balance like there is in the NFL.
Right.
There's not salary caps. There's not all these things that keep it that way. I'm going to talk about Herb Street's rant for a second.
Sure.
Okay. I have agreed, and you said that FSU, like if you're its four best, they're not one of the four best right now because they don't have their quarterback. But you're also making a very narrow definition of what best is, or how you can win games. And that's where the argument to me falls in on itself. Because if you're saying you can only win games a certain way, well, many teams, not just Florida State, their last two, have proven they can win games a lot of different ways. The best teams do win games a lot of different ways. Alabama, who's in this thing, has won games a lot of different ways this year, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't that's where, when you start doing it, just say, look, we're taking the SEC no matter what. We're taking the SEC no matter what.
Right.
So everybody else in the other three, somebody's getting effed. And, the fickle finger of effed fell on you, Florida State. That's where it really, that's what their rant should have been to me. It's like, look, they're always going to take the SEC. The SEC's better. Everybody thinks the SEC's better. Whether it's true or not, the SEC's better. So they're getting in no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it should have been. But, and he's frustrated because, and look, Kirk Herbstreit, he's won in life. He's won at life.
Yeah, he flies private jets with his golden retriever everywhere.
He doesn't need to be getting into it with FSU Twitter, which I will tell you is an absolute cesspool of madness.
It is, but like a lot of other fan bases are. But I think he's probably in a position, to be fair, where his mentions are such a dadgum mess that he just finally had to get something off of his chest, I suppose. And it's very subjective. It all is subjective, and I do agree with, they got the 4 quote unquote best teams in, but again, it's the whole, everybody's done this all over the country ad nauseum now of best 4 most deserving, whatever. The committee is supposed to do 4 best. And so they did that. It is what it is. But yeah, I think when he gets into the whole, they're better, and he states it as fact, it's like, no, well, now you're backing away from how subjective this all is. That's your subjective opinion that Alabama is clearly better, but just, it's a never-ending argument. I mean, people have dug their trenches and are going to stay in those and fight for, the side that they think is the right side. And I personally think that it set a bad precedent, but I also know that there's no culpability for it because there's nothing anybody can do about it other than, I guess, if you want to file a lawsuit and waste millions of dollars.
Georgia's filing a lawsuit to include the Orange Bowl in the playoff, which I don't know what
that's political theater that is.
Well, I don't know. A couple of years ago, there was a guy in the race for governor whose name escapes me right now. He's a buffoon, but he was commenting on that, like, Florida is beating Texas at everything, and the Bucs won the Super Bowl, and if you vote for me for governor, the Cowboys will win the Super Bowl. And I was like, how the hell can you promise such a thing when you have nothing to do with it? But whatever it takes, I guess, to get that job, and his more thing was we're going to eliminate property taxes, which to me would be much more attractive to most people than promising the Cowboys can win the Super Bowl somehow because of government intervention. But now these states are like trying to do this because it is like people call them and go, what can you do about this? They're like, I guess people don't understand it's not their job to do that. Right. It's not even close to their job, but nobody. I guess the general electorate doesn't know what our senators and representatives are supposed to do. So we'll just ask them to solve every problem. But Bracket Cat brought up, and we haven't talked about this yet. The NCAA says transfers who compete during this 14-day TRO will lose eligibility if the decision is reversed.
Yeah.
And
I want to say one more thing about Herb Street.
Yeah.
He says in his rant too about how, if you think I have an agenda, fine or whatever, and I just want the 4 best games and blah, blah, blah. But that all may be well and good. And I know as a broadcaster, I've heard him say before of how he wants, like, he's tired of going and watching the games that don't quote unquote matter as much to him. Like his time's at a premium now, even though he's getting paid handsomely for it. So he wants to see Ohio State, Michigan. He doesn't really want to fiddle with like Ohio State versus Northwestern, right? I mean, and he's not calling those games. He's calling the big games, but he wants more of the big games, and that's what he wants to do and broadcast. I can understand that. But you work for ESPN, buddy, and if you're trying to tell me that there's not some kind of leaning by that company and others involved in the TV networks and orchestrating this playoff, if there's not some kind of bias, then you're just an absolute filthy liar, and no one can possibly believe that. We all know there's a bias that's incorporated into this thing, and that's what makes it so maddening, is that's what it came down to, and who got the benefit of the doubt? The team that has some of that bias on their side, even though Florida State's on the same network, it's just not as desirable in that format as compared to the SEC format. And so, maybe Florida State gets that SEC rub sooner rather than later. But that is something where, like, yeah, pal, you still work for them. Like,
well, that's the company line,
right? And so that's why people have a hard time believing him, whether he's being 100% truthful or not about it. It's like, dude, you still work for ESPN, and we know what you guys want to get out of this whole thing.
Look, if you call, like, the company line is what you get when you call customer service, right? Yeah. Like, even if you know that, like, oh no, we have no idea how the power all went out. Like, now you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's just part of it where I'm kind of like, I don't quite agree with that. But, I mean, I think he probably just needed to, blow some steam off after getting riddled with Twitter mentions for the last week, of which I'm sure there's been tens of thousands. And, I do think he cares about college football, but I just don't agree with him eye to eye completely on that stance. But, okay, the transfer thing, very peculiar, because yesterday said if this were to get changed in the next 14 days after you'd entered, then no problem. They're not going to, rail against that and then flip their decision, and suddenly you would become ineligible. And I guess there would be a whole world of problems there if you just played in a couple of games and now suddenly you're ineligible again. But now what you're saying is that, in fact, the NCAA is saying the opposite today of what they said yesterday, basically, right? So, explain it again.
So, okay, the temporary restraining order allows everybody who was waiting on a waiver on a transfer to play right away. And they said yesterday that, they still if that they weren't going to challenge any of it. Everybody can play. Well, today they said if the temporary restraining order is reversed, that players could still lose a year of eligibility if they play during this time, which to me sounds like an incredibly stupid position to take
moronic
on something that you probably know you're going to lose.
Yeah, I mean, this is between now and December 27th. That's the 2-week time frame. So yesterday you thought that if you played, you would not burn a year, and today they are saying the complete opposite. And there's also, according to Amanda Kristovich and Ross Dellinger, there's still some confusion about whether that's completely black and white as it is, appears to be on the surface of, So now if you're these schools, you have no idea. Like, do you just out of cautionary reasons, because you don't know what this is going to look like, not play guys? Or what happens for the number of schools and players who just played like last night when this all came down and started to play right away? I mean, this is very on brand, though, for the NCAA to not even, have it be clear of what's allowed, I guess, in the next 2 weeks as far as the burning a year of eligibility goes and what would happen. But then again, it's banking on if a ruling is reversed, and I don't know how often that happens in favor of the NCAA. So maybe that's something you just chalk up as like, well, that'll never happen anyways. But there is now suddenly a bit of a question about what happens to your year of eligibility if you were somebody who wasn't allowed to play that suddenly plays in these next 2 weeks. Do you risk it? If you already did, what happens now? Is the rabbit out of the hat? I don't know, but that just smells like more lawsuits, Paul.
Yeah.
Is what that could turn into, which is, if that's your goal, is to get as many as possible. The NCAA has got to be the league leader at this point of if any brand out there, and certainly this would be a way to add some more cases onto their desks there. But yeah, they need to get some clarity on that in a hurry. That's a mess. And how could you not have had that ready to go?
The goal of the NCAA should be no more lawsuits. Like, no more lawsuits.
Like, but as Amanda Kristovich, and I hope I'm saying that right, but as she points out, is this not a way of just basically getting what you want and doing what you want? Because now you're saying, well, you better not play, because if this gets reversed, then so you basically still get what you want, because the people who aren't supposed to be playing are going to be too scared to play.
Yeah.
That doesn't answer what happens if you've already played now in the last 24 hours. But yeah, I don't know. That's very confusing. And now they're hanging this above people's heads again of, you might lose a year. We don't know for sure. You don't know for sure, but do you want to risk it?
Yeah.
It just seems like kind of a weird thing.
They don't know for sure.
They don't know for sure.
But they know.
But they know.
They know. Yeah. Like, they know. Like, what argument are they coming up with to win? I mean,
yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, it's if it gets reversed is carrying a lot of water there in that argument. I mean, how likely is that? I don't know, but yeah, it's more kind of stumbling all over yourself, or how calculated is it maybe that this is something that can still hang over people's heads? I don't know, but a lot of confusion there over this new transfer decision. That's for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, it is now time for the top 5.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 fits for Malik Murphy. There's one I did not include in here that Jack brought up that I should have added, and that's USC. California guy, but I guess maybe I'm putting too much into the guys they might already have on their roster, but I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Number 5, Miami. Why Miami? Well, they're in it on everybody else. I mean, they've been tied to Will Howard, to Cam Ward, to I'm leaving somebody out, but like they've had, I believe, Elijah Moore. All 3 of those guys have had some level of interest or maybe even visited Miami.
Thinking of Dante Moore?
Dante Moore. Dante Moore, all of that. Like, they've been down the road on a lot of guys. Would not be surprised to see them, if none of the other ones work out, DJU and Kyle McCord, maybe even in there as well. But to me, Malik Murphy, you got him for a couple years. with his skill set, that could be very interesting in Shannon Dawson's offense. We'll see, but they're in on everybody, so why not Malik Murphy too?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I guess, a good enough reason. It's like you like everybody, so why not this guy too? I mean, they're going to need a quarterback, so I guess if they strike out on 3 other targets, then, there's another name out there to go and get potentially. But if you look at, I guess, on 3 in particular, they have a little bit of an easier interface to work through, sorting things out and their rankings. I like to look all over, but theirs in particular, when it comes to Miami, their top 3 quarterbacks are all sitting there with a Miami logo next to them as their potential landing spot in Cam Ward, Dante Moore, and Will Howard. So, I mean, you would think they'd land one of those 3. The percentages are pretty good. They'd get one of those guys. But, I suppose if they were to strike out on all 3, or perhaps they suddenly have more interest in a Malik Murphy than they do a Dante Moore maybe, then I mean, there's reasons why they make sense. They clearly need a quarterback. They're clearly in the hunt on a lot of guys, and they want somebody very, very obviously. So, why not Miami?
Number 4, Michigan. We don't know about J.J. McCarthy yet, but my thought is he's going to be in the NFL draft, and he'll probably be the maybe 4th or 5th quarterback taken, which will probably all happen in the first round this year. It's going to be mostly quarterbacks and wide receivers, and a couple of offensive and defensive linemen. But Michigan roster is really good. You know the situation there. You can win there. They're not going. They can run an offense that doesn't expect too much out of the quarterback, or can get a lot out of the quarterback. Sharon Moore has made huge strides there as the offensive coordinator, and will probably be the head coach there very soon. But I think Michigan, especially if you want to win and win now, is a really good choice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how he fits in what they do exactly, and I don't know what their depth chart looks like because I'm just looking at this really for the first time. But I mean, in terms of a team who's close and knocking on the door and is probably going to lose their quarterback, like you said, to the NFL draft. I mean, Malik Murphy would be a great option for anybody. Again, don't know how he sizes up or vice versa, in Harbaugh's eyes, but he's clearly a guy with a lot of respect when it comes to quarterbacks and his own time there in the saddle. So, sure, if they lose McCarthy, then who are they going to be looking at and turning to next year? And the transfer portal is a place that everybody's looking to get better right away. So that would make sense.
Number 3, Auburn. Look, Hugh Freeze is going to get his quarterback eventually. And he's been a guy who's developed quarterbacks really well in the past. Now, he hasn't yet, and they've been quiet on this front, which really surprises me given the fact that quarterback has been so bad there for the last couple of years, and Hugh Freeze in his offense is going to try and thrive through that position. But Auburn, to me, would not be shocking to see them get involved for Malik Murphy, and maybe it's not the 3rd best place, but Hugh Freeze's off the field nonsense in his past notwithstanding, this is a guy who coaches up quarterbacks and pretty well, and I think would do well, and Malik Murphy would do well in the Hugh Freeze system.
Yeah, I saw that there was a little talk about about who could possibly fit there, and it does appear that there's a need. I mean, there's a need there for Hugh Freeze and company. He's obviously a guy too that has a lot of experience with the quarterback position. They've kind of been in my blind spot, Auburn, because they weren't really. I mean, the Alabama game notwithstanding, they were just kind of there. You know what I mean? In this first year with Hugh Freeze, but. They definitely need to attack the portal, and they need to get better in a hurry, and they need quarterbacks. So not knowing their depth chart at the back of my hand, that's possibly a spot for Malik Murphy.
Yeah, there's nobody on their depth chart that you would take over. Well, I mean, like over Malik Murphy, right. Honestly. So that's a place he's going to go in, and there's not even a question over to what his status is.
Yeah. I mean, if you only got young guys and none of them are as proven, then sure, he's an option for any school like that.
Number 2, Washington. I like kind of the same thing as Michigan, but to me, as far as offensive, prolificness, would go, this one would be way better because what Kalen DeBoer is doing there is really unbelievable. And they don't have a set quarterback for next year, although I know that there's some talk about them and Will Rogers. But yeah, I think Malik Murphy and Kalen DeBoer, I really like the skill set Malik Murphy has. I know it's not like he wasn't perfect in his 2 starts, but the dude reminds me of Dante Culpepper. I keep saying it. He's got a big arm. He's a big dude. He's got traits you just don't come by all that often. And I think with Washington's offense, it could be really, really good.
I mean, they did a great job this past season on offense with a lot of great receivers helping Michael Penix out. He too was very good. All 3 are going to
be gone.
And they're all gone, and Michael Penix, moving on. And so they desperately need to fill some holes there on offense and at the quarterback spot. So, Kalen DeBoer is going to, I think, have a lot of guys eager to play in his system and to play quarterback for him. Dante Culpepper, I mean, he's a big dude, that's for sure. I mean, he can sling it around. So, yeah, okay, the Huskies. Definitely. Yeah. Man, I'm interested to see on the other end of what their talent exodus does look like off of this playoff team because it's going to be pretty significant.
Yeah, absolutely. And number 1, on the outside of the playoff looking in, with a quarterback guru running your team and a great offensive coordinator in Brian Hartline and a never-ending string of skill players, Ohio State. To me, if I'm Ohio State, not that Cam Ward wouldn't be my number 1, but after Cam Ward, if you're getting into if I want to maybe build something for a little while here, Malik Murphy makes a lot of sense. Right now it's Devin Brown, and then you've got another freshman on the roster, and you got Aaron Noland coming in, who's a big 4 or 5 star prospect, again depending on the service. But you've got those guys coming in. But Malik Murphy, with his skill set in that offense, I think could be very, very special.
Yeah, he could do some damage there with Ryan Day, and the success that they've had in the quarterback spot's got to be super enticing for any player. I mean, to look at the guys they put in the league and even some of the backups, Joe Burrow, Quinn Ewers. I mean, even those guys, you can't claim them. I know some Buckeyes fans have tried, but you can't claim them. But, yeah, they've had a ridiculous run of quarterback talent, and this is the spot that when Malik Murphy wasn't anywhere near the transfer portal just yet. I mean, even a couple weeks ago, people were talking about the odds that he would probably be going in at some point, and this seemed like an earmarked spot for somebody like Malik Murphy in particular to end up. Yeah, I don't know what the Buckeyes' interest level is. I don't know what they've got up their sleeve. Obviously, if you're willing to walk away from your starter this past season, who wasn't some bum, I mean, in Kyle McCord, a guy who played pretty well for you, but obviously you can get better there. I think that's the thing is that it's pretty good. You could be elite, though. You've been elite there. You were elite very recently with C.J. Stroud in particular. You want to be elite again. And I don't know. Is Malik Murphy elite compared to Kyle McCord? I mean, I don't think so based on everything that we've seen so far. But maybe with Ryan Day's tutelage and the weapons they've got around and whatnot, maybe he would be that in short order. Obviously, a very talented player, and this would be a super intriguing spot because of their success at that position. So, yeah, I'm very curious to see many things, obviously, I say that, but I'm interested. Not just Malik Murphy does, but what does Ohio State do after moving on from Kyle McCord? What is their game plan here?
Yeah, they haven't been mentioned in any of this yet, and so maybe they just really love Devin Brown all of a sudden.
Hey, yeah, maybe.
Where's number 33? So big up to him for that. But
yeah, I mean that's a spot that again was being mentioned before Malik Murphy entered the portal for him. And so you would think that would make some sense now that he's officially in there because they do still appear to need a quarterback. But, all these places that you just mentioned do. So, yeah, the quarterback carousel will continue to be a wild ride. And who knows who still continues on to end up entering it at some point or another down the road when we get into spring ball and all that starts to shake out as well. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Craig. Thanks to everybody who's been a part of the show. Jack McKenzie, another great day of producing. Max Olssen, Taylor McHargue, and, of course, Chris Level as well. 365 Sports tonight at 10:30 on the CW locally here in Waco. Thanks for watching whatever you do. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody.